when conservatives get their way, to, I won't spoil the surprise. Because Felice and I have this running joke about states' rights, brother. It only works if it's convenient for them. Hello, good morning, friend. How are you?
Good morning. Good. It's 5 a.m. Yay! No, I'm good.
I know, like I always say, I'm always grateful for you when you get up so damn early to join us. But so I was just kind of tipping things off here. We're going to kind of do our latest updates. Things are happening quickly. I think that's the thing that we all need to kind of keep in mind, right? Things are happening so quickly, and I think what's really important that we understand here is that the social media, as good as it is, can amplify things to the point where it's not necessarily always what you see on the ground, because there were LA police officers that were attending pride parades over the weekend. So we know, the perception that you want to get from the administration is that the entire city of Los Angeles is burning, and that's the argument that they'll use to try to justify using the Insurrection Act or all those kinds of things. And I do think it's interesting, though, because this is going to come up, arguments regarding the National Guard. I've got some sound that I'll play from Gavin Newsom. We know, and I know you know this, Felice, there are 50 governors, and each one of them has responsibility is the commander-in-chief of their National Guards, with the exception of D.C. So I find it funny that the president can, violate the Constitution because there was no direct line of communication. And I'll play that sound from Gavin Newsom. Actually, let me just play that right now, because I think it speaks exactly to what we're talking about here, about how the dishonesty and
before we get into that, can I just say, because I just want to point out, when I think about, seeing the world in patterns, I think what has happened, the pattern I've noticed, is Trump is trying to rob us all, essentially. Rob the middle class, rob the lower classes. And last week was a PR nightmare. And this just comes from my background in advertising and PR. It was a literal PR nightmare for him, right? We have the richest man in the world saying he's in the Epstein tapes, also pointing out the math is mathing and he's robbing everyone. He's going to put our children's children into debt. And I talked about this on the People's Receipts on Friday, when everyone was like coming in the comments and being like, did you see Kilmar Abrego Garcia is on the way home? Yeah, I find that very convenient that when Trump is in a literal PR nightmare, the man who said it was impossible to bring this guy back, there was a 9-0 Supreme Court order months ago saying facilitate his return, and that could never happen until the moment they needed it. And not just was they need the biggest distraction, and that one didn't work, and I was explaining this on Friday, and I haven't had time since we've decided to, literally just call up the U.S. military and turn it on American citizens. But if Trump had not decided to do that, what I was going to be doing this weekend was showing that what Pam Bondi did on Friday with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, she already did once before. Back in February, she had an hour and 30-minute press conference. And I was like, she literally had me fooled. I was like, okay, maybe they did apprehend the East Coast leader of MS-13. Because otherwise, who the F would have an hour and 30-minute press conference calling some random person an unaliver, illicit substance trafficker, a human trafficker? I mean, anything you could have accused this random person that no one had ever heard of was, hour and 30 minutes. Guess what happened with that individual? They were never charged, because it was not real. Trump wanted a press conference saying that something had happened that didn't happen. That's why I was like, oh, I've seen this before. I don't know if anyone saw the Kilmar Abrego Garcia press conference, but at the end, a literal reporter's like, hey, you keep saying he's involved in unalivings and all these things. They're like, none of this is in the indictment. What are you effing talking about? And her response is the literal definition of double hearsay, right? Someone said.
Exactly. I know a guy who knows a guy.
This is someone beholden to the ethics of the bar, spreading lies on Friday at a press conference. And obviously that distraction from Trump's lies was not big enough, right? From the fact he's robbing everyone, Elon Musk isn't backing off seemingly. So
no.
And I'll give this to Trump. He's a narcissist or opportunist, right?
Sure enough.
He takes what's in front of him and he uses every opportunity. And this is just, okay, well, that my first 2 attempts at distraction aren't working. So let me turn the U.S. military on American citizens.
That's exactly right. Did we hear the big push in regards to Abednego Garcia now is that he's a schmafficker, right? And that was never brought up before. That was never mentioned before. Interstate schmafficking. It was just about his connections to MS-13. There was never any, to your point, right? This is all part of we've talked about this numerous times about everything is a distraction. Avert your eyes, right? It's like, this is the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This is exactly where we're at. So you need. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the federal government, the reason they have a 98+% conviction rate is because normally when a federal indictment comes down, it's not double hearsay, right? It's not someone said, right? It is hey, here's a paper trail or a forensic accounting trail. This is a foregone conclusion that this person committed this crime. You can plead out or you can be the idiot that goes to trial against forensic accounting and, wire fraud. There's always a paper trail. So, I mean, if you've read the indictment, that's not what's going on in this indictment. It's just hearsay. So, yeah, I think that this is it's similar. They never went to court with the guy they made up all the lies about. They never even charged him. The one they said was the East Coast leader of MS-13. But yeah, I don't think there is a case, but that's not the point, right? Trump tries everything. Trump's just playing a president on TV. Pam Bondi's not a real attorney general. She's a lobbyist for Middle Eastern countries.
Qatar in particular, $115,000 a month.
She's just playing an attorney general on TV. They're just playing parts.
That's exactly right. I want to. Yes, obviously, we're going to touch on all that today because all these things are interwoven. I think we should talk specifically about some of the rhetoric that's been spun out there, specifically from. Well, let's listen to Gavin Newsom's sound first because this is a moment for Gavin Newsom. We'll see how he responds to it, but this is his recap of a conversation. So part of the federalization of the National Guard requires either a request from the governor, with the exception of D.C., because the president of the United States is the commander-in-chief who oversees the D.C. National Guard. Remember that, MAGA, January 6th? Remember that? Yeah, you probably don't. Anyway, so there either has to be a request made or there has to be it has to rise to the level of insurrection for the president to circumvent the Constitution to be able to order in the National Guard, never mind the United States Marines. So that's part of the requirement. So this is Gavin Newsom in regard to recapping a conversation he had.
And this issue never came up. I kept trying to talk about LA. He wanted to talk about all these other issues. We had a very decent conversation.
When was this?
This was late Friday night. I think about 1:30 plus his time.
After the protests had started?
After the protests. And he never once brought up the National Guard. He's a stone cold liar. He said he did. Stone cold liar. Never did. It was a very civil conversation. I've always wanted to approach engagement with the President of the United States in a respectful and responsible way. But there's no working with the president. There's only working for him.
It's an interesting point, right? So again, Gavin Newsom's recap of the conversation would be, no, there was never an ask. I never asked. There was never a conversation about it. And then you have the president out on
ask you that. Sorry to interrupt you, but Governor, so that's news. If you're going to sue the administration, tell me a little bit about it.
Let's get to 50K. Tap the screen. Well, happy Monday, by the way. Missed you all.
Yes, happy Monday.
All weekend not sleeping and having anxiety.
You and me both, sister, as we discussed yesterday. I think between us, we might get a decent night's sleep.
Slept 4 hours in 3 days.
Oh, you had me beat by a couple hours. Okay.
Collectively, between the two of us.
That's exactly right. Okay, so this was Mr. Trump when asked about, how he was going to approach the situation in L.A. And I want you to listen to the words And as we discussed his not only autocratic tendencies, well, I'll just leave it at that. And just listen how he responds.
California, are you prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act?
Depends on whether or not there's an insurrection. You have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it. We're going to have troops everywhere.
We're going to have troops everywhere. We're going to have troops everywhere. This is
all written in Project 2025. Like, I just want to be very clear. Like, Trump didn't invent it. This is all written down in Project 2025, right? I mean, when in the federal, not the Georgia, but the federal J6 indictment that was presided, Trump's indictment, the federal case about January 6th, he was having these conversations. This is why he wanted, what's the guy's name? Not Jeffrey Miller, Jeff Clark. Jeff Clark. That's the guy. That's why he was going to install him as AG, because he was willing to help Trump invoke the Insurrection Act and turn the U.S. military on American citizens. Like, this is nothing new. Trump has been salivating to do this for quite some time.
Remember that famous quote? There was conversations during that time when someone said, "Well, if you do that, you're going to have people and riots in the streets." And he's like, "That's all we have the Insurrection Act for."
Oh yeah, so not Jeff Sessions, Jeff Clark, the Christian nationalist wacko. Look him up.
Correct. So let's just talk a little bit about the process of federalizing the National Guard, guys. I think we should just take a moment and do that. And then Felice and I have got a lot. We always joke about states' rights, brother. So we're going to have that conversation today because there's states' rights. So we're going to have that conversation.
Be thinking, because I know it takes. If any of you are listening now, if you're going to want to have this conversation, it takes the wheels a while for you guys to get turning. So be thinking in your head how you are not a giant hypocrite right now, right? It's states' rights when it's suppressing black and brown people's vote. It's states' rights when it's, hey, we want to use 2A to, pew slaves in the legs and drag them back to plantations. But all of a sudden, you guys are the opposite of states' rights. I find it hilarious.
States' rights are education. States' rights are women's bodies.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, then it's states' rights, brother. But whenever it has to do, as long as it's you guys using the federal government to increase the size of the swamp and do the backstroke in it, suddenly you guys are fine. Someone explain to me later when it's time how this does not make you guys logically inconsistent hypocrites.
Exactly. Friends, there's a flash goal. It's the heart. So if you need 27 more individual people. So you would not. I appreciate that. All right. So federalizing the National Guard means placing a state's National Guard troops under federal control rather than their usual command under the state's governor. This authority lies with the president, who can activate the National Guard for national missions under Title 10 of U.S. Code. Each state, as we know, has, with the exception, and then controlled by the governor, with the exception of D.C. D.C.'s federal territory. The commander-in-chief of the military, who is the president, commands the D.C. National Guard. How federalization works. U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, gives Congress the power to call forth the militia. Title 10, U.S. Code 12406, 12301 through 12305 governs federalization. The Insurrection Act of 1807 allows the president to deploy military, including the National Guard, domestically under extremely rare conditions. When can the National Guard be federalized? War or national emergency? Does that sound like the situation in LA? No. To enforce federal laws. Does that sound like the situation in LA? No. To suppress insurrection, rebellion? No. And to repel invasion. So those are the federal laws under our Constitution. Of course, what we know that Trumpers and Trump in particular don't care about. Those are what the federal laws require, either of those, to be able to use the Insurrection Act, to federalize the National Guard. The National Guard is one thing. That is the citizens' militia, if you will. But calling in the U.S. Marines? For what? For what? Again, we told you this was the plan. We told everyone that this was the plan. And Felice, you hit the nail on the head to start. This was all part of the game, all part of the strategy to weaponize. And to, and then there's the question of whether or not you're obeying a legal oath. And I just want to let folks know, in anticipation of tomorrow, we have confirmed there'll be a new episode of the Effing Fight For podcast town hall with myself, Felice, and Matt, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to talk about the military's role now that it has been weaponized against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. So that'll be tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'll remind folks as we go through the day. So
4 p.m. Pacific. I'm just defending us who are on West Coast. Just let's not forget ourselves. No, and I was just, and Matt's going to be host, USMC Angry Veteran. Matt's going to host, obviously, this is kind of his wheelhouse. So I'm interested to get his take tomorrow as well as things unfold.
Agreed. So there have been some historical examples in the past when there were some serious events in our nation's history. Not to interrupt again.
Yes, this will start on time because it's not my live. So yes, people who attend my live are like 4:30. Then no, I show up on time to other people's lives.
4-ish. So in 1957, there was referred to as the Little Rock Nine. National Guard troops were federalized. Eisenhower federalized Arkansas Guard to enforce school integration. The 9/11 attacks, 2001. Yes, National Guard was federalized to activate and assist with security. C-19, partially federalized in 2020. Some units federalized, others remained under state control. And then the George Floyd protests in 2020. No federalization, but discussions occurred about invoking the Insurrection Act. Critics warn that using federal troops domestically risks abuse of power or martial law, MARTIAL. Martial law.
That's a MAGA. Don't say it to us. MAGA is the one that keeps misspelling it on X.
My mods asked me this morning if I would clarify that. So yes, it's not Marshall like Penny Marshall from Laverne and Shirley. It'd be like Marshall.
Oh, you dated yours. I have no idea what that means. Is that some sort
Yes, you do.
No,
yes,
I don't. I do. Wait, is there a show? It's not. Mork and Mindy was the one with Robin Williams.
Happy
right?
Days. Yeah, Happy Days spinoff. It was a Happy Days spinoff.
I never knew that.
Okay. Yeah,
I know what Happy Days is, and I know the song from Laverne and Shirley because my mom would sing it.
Schlemiel.
Yes, I know that my mom would sing that song. So I know I never knew it till right now as a spinoff of Happy Days.
Yes, it was. Okay. Civil liberties critics warn that using federal troops domestically risks abuse of power or martial law-like conditions. Governors may resist federalization, for example, during Trump's threats to invoke Insurrection Act in 2020. So we've been down this road before. And then politicization, tough word to say. Concerns arise when federalization appears motivated by political goals rather than clear national necessity. So to summarize, governor is the commander-in-chief per state, with the exception of D.C., because D.C. is federal territory. President is commander-in-chief under federal conditions. Title 32 status under state control. Title 10 status under federal control. Used for local emergencies like just natural disasters, things like that, where you see the National Guard handing out food, water, assistance after a natural disaster. Or that's locally, state control. And then used for national crisis or military operations under federal control. And then it's state funded with federal support under the state, fully federally funded when used as a part of federal control. So your taxpayer dollars, ladies and gentlemen, is being used to have an illegal attempt to use a National Guard on the streets of Los Angeles.
Cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, everyone. Like, it's just a joke at this point. It's a joke. Like, quite literally. And just in defense of myself, I was raised by an evangelical, like, cult type family. I was not allowed to watch, I didn't have cable TV. I grew up on episodes of Hogan's Heroes and, like, I Love Lucy, because that was the only thing on when I was a little kid. So, in my defense, it's not that I don't know, like, you know, older shows. That was all I had access to. My mom made me watch the Lawrence Welk show on PBS, okay? Like, please, I've been there. I wanted to talk, can I talk about the code? Because this is, the research I was doing, like, I was looking up the U.S. code that Trump used to invoke, you know, to call up the National Guard. Mm-hmm. It is, and that's the same. It's also, if you want to, it's referenced in the article, the New York Times article I sent you and Matt yesterday. It's
before you do that. Before you do that, I want to take you down memory lane. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Camille,
Okay, there you go. Sorry, I was in my head and I had to get it out. Now it's out.
Everyone knows that. Who grew up in the U.S. and didn't have cable as a child. If you're a millennial, I feel like you had to hear that.
Gen X for the win. Gen X for the win. All right, you were saying. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
So again, the actual U.S. code that Trump is using to call up the National Guard, because it's fascinating. They're talking about it in like the New York Times as if it's 10 USC, which whenever you hear 10 USC, it just means United States Code, right? Title 10, which it relates to the armed forces. Okay, so 12406 is the actual code. And it says whenever one, the United States or any of the Commonwealth or possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. 2, there is a rebellion or a danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. 3, the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. And then, but underneath that, right, this is a really short U.S. statute. And this is, the president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws. Orders for these purposes shall be issued. Now, here's the best part, because I know Trump can't read and couldn't name this statute. Shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia, which on that, on J6 was Christopher Miller, after you really learn like the chain of command with the National Guard in D.C. So, I mean, like, I get it. He's just like, oh, up here. Because, I mean, and this is my assumption. I haven't talked to Trump directly about this, nor do I think he could. I mean, I've listened to him.
You haven't called him? You haven't
he can't walk with, I mean, who knows? He fell up the stairs twice yesterday. I mean, the man is incapable of even walking. So, did you see him? He's like screaming at the press and then falls up the stairs. Like,
but we're supposed to see that. Wow.
What? Oh my God. Trump took a spill. Trump took a spill. I can't wait till we get to court to talk about who's more senile, Trump or Biden. I can't wait. I hope we invalidate all the pardons. I don't care. I'm never going to get a pardon. I'll never have $1 million to buy a pardon.
Nope.
Like, I don't think the people that Biden pardoned ultimately did anything wrong. Except, I mean, Hunter Biden might have to serve whatever his jail sentence would be. But
whatever. Who cares?
I mean, I don't care. You shouldn't do what you did if you don't want to go to jail. So ultimately, I don't care if all those pardons are repealed. So all those rich people have to go to jail and pay their restitution. Trump has cost us over $1 billion just with his pardons in 2025 in restitution to the United States taxpayers that will no longer be paid by people that committed white collar fraud.
I'm with you on the pardon thing. I think that's a conversation that we should be able to have. Like, I get it now. It's presidential. It's unchecked. It's unfettered. They can pardon whoever they want. But, Joe Biden takes a lot of heat for some of the people that he pardoned. But there was people that were on death row. He just commuted their sentence so that they're no longer on death row, but they're still serving life in prison. So it's like it's
people that were like community leaders on house arrest.
Or weed charges or whatever. Like, give me a break. It's just like I don't believe in capital punishment. So I wish there was no such thing as death row, quite frankly. But that's a conversation we could have a different day. But you're right.
But I do. Maybe we should set the precedent that people in Congress should be prosecuted. Because I guarantee the real criminals are on Trump's side. There's so many Pete Sessions. I'm talking to you, Ron Johnson. You guys should have all been indicted for J6.
Barry Loudermilk.
Let's play this game. I would love to play it. I'm not into nepotism. I don't think I'll ever be granted a pardon for any reason, so I really don't care. But wait, and someone in the comments made a good point. Whilst this was all going on, right, the relatively peaceful protests, again, there's always going to be bad actors in a protest. I mean, that's just the nature of it. I could get into psychological studies about that. But yeah, the majority on Saturday of protesters, the vast majority were peaceful. Trump was at a UFC event, acting an absolute fool, embarrassing himself, whilst he's saying that he's calling up the U.S. military and turning it on American citizens. He's making a fool of himself at a UFC event.
Something that you said too, specifically regarding holding elected officials accountable, which is again language in the big, bold, beautiful piece of shit bill that said that judges cannot hold federal officials in particular in contempt. So that was something that I forget the specific language, but basically that they're immune from justice. I mean, why would
not
that be
they
in a
can't
budget?
hold them? That's not what it is. It's basically
something
what it
along
is
those lines.
what they're mad about is that because Trump continues to violate the Constitution over and over unquestionably, they say he's the victim of over judging. The job of the federal judiciary is to interpret the law and limit the executive branch. That's their job. And when someone is trying to do things like, send people to concentration camps who entered the country illegally and who deserve due process, the federal judiciary is going to have to get involved. And what they're mad about are nationwide injunctions, right? A federal judge in, say, wherever, Alabama, saying, hold on, this is a nationwide injunction and you can't remove anyone else until we figure this out. It goes to the Court of Appeals and we figure this out. That's right. And what the loophole, which it's insidious, and this is how Republicans are insidious liars, is apparently in the actual U.S. code of the law, it says that all of these nationwide injunctions need to be backed by a security bond. And if they're not backed, and what the language they entered into the big ugly bill is, if these injunctions aren't backed by a security bond, then they will be invalidated, which the language they wrote it in is asinine. Like, it's literally in perpetuity, goes back forever. And any federal ruling, they didn't even put nationwide injunction. It's just any ruling by a federal judge that wasn't backed by a security bond will be invalidated.
Yeah, and why would you need to have language like that unless you wanted to protect your criminality?
Yeah, well, they were intent. No, I mean, they want to be able to, and this is what Dr. Danny and I used to talk about, right, with women's bodily autonomy and AB rights. What they want is to say every single piece of this law or bill you have to contest separately, right? Or, hey, if you get a federal judge in Alabama in a district court to issue an injunction, then you need to go to every other district court in the land one by one. And until you do, we can keep deporting people, right? They want to make it as hard as possible. They don't want just you get it to one federal judge and they say this is a legal nationwide injunction. They want to say, okay, go to every single district court and get one now. And until you do, we're going to keep deporting people without due process.
In addition to the federal codes that Felice was discussing, there's also, I just wanted to kind of touch real quickly on the Insurrection Act, which is 10 U.S.C. 251 through 255. It's enacted in 1807 to allow the president to use military forces, including the federalized National Guard, to restore order during insurrection or rebellion, unlawful obstruction of federal law, domestic violence that the states cannot control, and then interference with federal laws or rights. So even the LA Police Department, it was talking about how there's been nothing that's gone to that level. So there's no reason to justify calling the National Guard or the Marine Corps. Yes, Felice.
Oh, I just wanted to point out Pamela is not a genius in the comments. She said illegals don't have due process. Pamela, next time just write, I can't read, and I definitely have never read the U.S. Constitution. Yeah. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what due process is. It does not matter. Do you understand what democracy is? Let me give you an example. If you went on vacation to Mexico, if you saved, finally got that passport none of you MAGA people have, and left the country to go to an all-inclusive one-star resort in Cancun, and they just arrested you, didn't just arrest you, but mailed you to another country, to a concentration camp, do you think you should have the right to due process? Of course you do, in democratic countries. Otherwise, there are travel advisories on countries like China, like Russia. You might be snatched off the street and not get due process. Pamela, your brain's not working, and the remedy for that is learn to read and do basic math. That's my advice to you. You have no idea what due process is.
And Pamela, the beautiful thing about the Constitution is it clearly delineates between what is a citizen and what is a person. And in our Constitution, it clearly states that any person, it prohibits states from denying any person within their jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So to Felice's point, Pamela, do you need to spend some time under the reading rainbow? I might suggest that.
We're defunding PBS. Pamela can't read, and we're defunding PBS. It makes perfect sense.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Okay, so again, the key provisions in regards to the Insurrection Act. At a state's request, the president can act only if the state legislature or governor requests help to suppress said insurrection. Enforcing federal law, president can act without a state's request if ordinary law enforcement cannot enforce federal laws. No federal laws have been violated during these protests, and then used when states fail to protect constitutional rights, most famously used during the civil rights movement. None of that applies here. None of it. So again, this is the distraction because they don't want the attention of the Epstein files. They don't want the attention of Trump falling downstairs. Apparently, they don't want I've got some sound I'm going to play regarding his basically throwing his hands up, knowing that he can't end the war between Russia and Ukraine. All that kind of stuff. So there is so much for us to get to today. Anything else you want to touch on before we kind of dive into our whole states' rights discussion?
Yeah, I just think I'm just thinking in my head because I do have a degree in history. If you think that there is a riot that constitutes turning the U.S. military on American citizens going on in California, I would say, number one, you have no understanding of the size and scope of Los Angeles. In 5 small areas, there's some people acting a fool. You just have no concept of the size of LA County, period, or what goes on there, or how actually outfitted their police. The LA police force is the military. Just to be clear,
it is.
This is something that people have long had a problem with. The same weapons the U.S. military has, so do the LA police force. It's actually quite terrifying.
Correct.
They are trained, in almost a merciless way to put down riots. We could go, and I think some of them enjoy it, and it's long been a problem inside the LAPD, the corruption. But yeah, I would liken this, read a book on in the 1992 Los Angeles Watts riots. You have no idea, what precedent is. There is nothing going on in LA.
I'll be right back.
People set fires in LA 10 times a day, right? That's the reality. If you think, in 1992, look up the Los Angeles Watts riots. Was the U.S. military turned on American citizens? Absolutely not. It is delusional to think that anything going on in LA right now constitutes the U.S. military being called up, especially the Marines. Sorry, I'm just reading. Good morning. Fax just had to, I don't know why. Fax is probably crying in a corner. Trump has demonized immigration. Oh, yeah. I think that is the point. But also, I could give other examples. Number one, here's the things to watch out for. Number one, and I think some of them aren't doing it on purpose, in fairness, but I've noticed on X, there is more content circulating from 2020, from the George Floyd 2020 riots, than from this weekend. If I see one more video of people being like, look at what's happening in Los Angeles, and then Elon Musk's AI tool is like, yeah, that's 2020. First of all, make sure you understand what you're looking at. Just because someone says it's in LA, this happened this weekend, does not mean that it happened this weekend, right? Period. And wait, I have one more thing to say, but I forgot what it was.
Go for it.
It'll come to me. No, I forgot. It'll come to me.
Before we get too deep down this road of this states' rights conversation, what we've seen a lot of is of the blatant hypocrisy. So, you mentioned this earlier. As I look at Trump's cabinet, I think about people like Pete Hegseth. I think about people like Kristi Noem. I think about people like Pam Bondi. It's a TV show. They're producing a TV show. So he wants people that look good on camera. He wants people who present themselves well, who've got celebrity. So don't forget, Tulsi Gabbard wants to turn the intelligence briefings into a Fox News style produced event. So it's about incompetence. So when they're hypocritical, it's either because they don't remember what they said, or they are just incompetent to understand how blatant their hypocrisy is. Case in point. Okay, this is Christy Nguyen.
The Tulsi Gabbard thing is because Trump cannot read. I just want to be clear.
Exactly.
Yeah,
good point.
And I'm quoting people from Reince Priebus, Steve Mnuchin, people that worked with Trump in his first term in his cabinet have all said he will not read a Post-it note. And what's happening is Tulsi Gabbard has realized he can't read. So what they're trying to do is put on a news show, because Trump watches, like, say, Fox Business every morning or CNBC, and they're trying to put on a show for him so he can figure out what's going on without having to read. Like that. So, I mean, that's why that's happening. But yeah, it is a reality show, right? Like, that's why so many people in his cabinet are Fox News producers. The guy running the FAA, is he a pilot? No. Does he have any expertise in transportation? Does his brain work? No. He's a former Real World cast member. He's a D-list reality star.
Yeah. And wasn't he a UFC fighter? Wasn't the Treasury Secretary like a former UFC fighter? I think like that, or a boxer or something to that effect.
Treasury Secretary?
No, the Transportation Secretary.
Oh, Sean Duffy? I didn't know that.
I think he was.
Sean Duffy was fighting, and well, I mean, maybe he went to
or
like,
a lumberjack
training
or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that.
We know Christy Nguyen, right? We know who she's. The Secretary of Homeland Security. So this is what she said on X a couple years ago. If Joe Biden federalizes the National Guard, that would be a direct attack on states' rights, brother. Over the last several years, we've seen Democrats try to take away our freedoms of religion, assembly, and speech. We can't let them take away our rights to defend ourselves, too. South Dakota defends the Constitution. So, Christy, since it's your agency, it's ICE and other people running around with masks on. I'm going to play some sound about that mask in a second. Isn't it funny, though, when you are now the person in charge and you are following a fascist manifesto? Apparently, you don't care about individual state freedoms. You only care about what looks good on TV. Right? That's crazy.
And also, she didn't want, I mean, not to go back, but I've read a lot of I love Crew, Citizens for, Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. This is what Trump, Trump stole a bunch of people's security clearances. He hates Norm Eason, who runs Crew, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, that they're the people responsible for figuring out the whole Pam Bondi accepted a check was bribed by Trump situation. They basically do a ton of research, submit a Freedom of Information Act request. They're the ones, Chrissy, why am I wanting to say whatever her name is? What is it? Christy now? Whatever. She's mad at Biden for implying or say, she's like, if Biden calls up the National Guard, then that's illegal. She used a billionaire's money, right? Uh-huh. One of my favorite research papers ever written by the Citizens for Renewed Ethics in Washington, Norm Eason and Noah Bookbinder. She used a billionaire from Tennessee's money to call up the South Dakota National Guard and send them to the border. She didn't want Biden to do it, but then imagine the implications of if somebody who has billions of dollars can raise the U.S. military. You want to talk about an oligarchy? I mean, that's what was revealed. And the golden boy, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, realized what was going on. And they have Freedom of Information Act requests with his emails being like, this is not okay. You've got some billionaire in Tennessee paying to deploy the South Dakota National Guard to the border. This is insane. And the logic was, which didn't end up working in the end, South Dakota had to change things because it's so illegal to have a billionaire funding the South Dakota National Guard being called up on U.S. soil. But they said that
illegality.
The second, the first largest indigenous reservation, I hate that word, is, the Window Rock in the Four Corners area of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, that area. The second largest is in South Dakota. It's called Pine Ridge. And her legal justification, which was ridiculous, and she's not allowed to step foot on that reservation again because she lied. She said it was a forward operating base, Pine Ridge Reservation, one of the most depressed areas with the highest unaliving rate in the country. It was a forward operating base for the Mexican cartels. And that's why she could call up the South Dakota military and turn it on U.S. citizens, was because the cartel was now invading South Dakota, which is a complete lie. There was no evidence of this, and she's not allowed to step foot on that reservation for lying on indigenous people.
I want to remind folks of a few things, and I'm going to get some interesting sound because we brought up masks, and I want to play some sound about masks and hypocrisy. But the CBP, which falls under Border Patrol, which falls under Kristi Noem and her Department of Homeland Security, they put out this post just 2 days ago on their official X site. Quote, "Let this be clear. Anyone who assaults or impedes a federal law enforcement officer or agent in the performance of their duties will be arrested and swiftly prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Attack a cop, and lifelong consequences will follow." As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, on his first day in office, Donald Trump pardoned 1,500 cop-beating insurrectionists from January 6th. That quote again, "Let this be clear from the CBP. Anyone who assaults or impedes a federal law enforcement officer or agent in the performance of their duties will be arrested and swiftly prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Attack a cop, and lifelong consequences will follow." The hypocrisy.
Unless if we're going to follow the line of logic, then of course Trump will be issuing pardons to anyone arrested in any protests, right, across the country. I don't think that's going to be happening, but I'm saying that would be right. Mm-hmm. I mean, just like the J6ers, but what we know, and again, Trump's no genius. He can't read a Post-it note, and he almost hit his face on the stairs of Air Force One yesterday. It's not looking great. It's not looking great for your orange man in chief. But again, and says no men should be wearing makeup, but continues to wear terrible looking makeup every single day. But he's your guy. I mean, it's only embarrassing for you all. It just shows how idiotic MAGA it truly is. But yeah, I mean, that's the reality. And let me give you another example of the weird well, first of all, let me finish the line of logic. We know Trump's not going to pardon everyone who's arrested, like in these LA protests, right?
Of course not.
But if he was logically consistent, he absolutely would. But what else would be logically consistent? That all he's doing, Trump's not a genius. That's what MAGA doesn't understand. And you and I were discussing this yesterday on the phone quite passionately, is that I actually don't think MAGA are anti-Semitic. I don't think that they, wrong. I think a lot of people in Trump's administration are, and I could provide proof of that right now. But I'm saying there's a lot of phrases in like "Make America Great Again" and around there that are constantly uttered by MAGA. And I'm talking about the grunts, the ones that Trump is robbing every day that can't figure out and still believe brown people have their money, like those types, right? And there's a lot of phrases around MAGA where people just repeat them and they're like, yeah, it's catchy. I'm just chanting this. And they don't know that's rooted in anti-Semitism from 1930s and 40s Germany, period. All of it. Like everything that Trump is doing now, down to the slogan, "Make America Great Again," that is literally anti-Semitism from 1930s and 40s Germany. That's what you guys are doing. You stole an idea. You think Trump's a genius? No, he just took a model that existed in 1930s and 40s Germany, and now he's like, we'll just do it here. And none of you guys are smart. And that is why we're all laughing at you. Well, you're like, the left are anti-Semites. Am I running around chanting anti-Semitic rhetoric 24 hours a day, pointing at other people saying they're anti-Semitic? No, I am not, because I'm not an idiot.
A microaggressive example of that is when the right brings up George Soros' name. Right? They don't.
A Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivor that they like.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate anti-Semitic trope. Oh, he's up to something, isn't? Don't you guys think? You don't think the billionaires that we can actually use forensic? I can show you who's robbing you. It's not George Soros. Unfortunately, like we can use forensic accounting and figure out which rich people are robbing you, and it's not George Soros.
Trigger, if you want some attention, I mean, I understand. Here's the problem, though. When you write a sentence that says, we won the election, we're the ones laughing, it would be we apostrophe R-E, as in we are the ones laughing, not were. Not were. So thanks for playing, though. Appreciate you. Okay, so
Trigger, just request, if you want to have a conversation, don't do it in the comments. Just request and have the nerve to speak out loud. If you're so passionate, right, you're having a metaphysical meltdown, then just have a conversation with us about it.
Right. I mean, I can't speak for Felice. I don't bite. I only nibble. I can't speak for her. So we'll have to have that conversation a different day. I want to get back to... I want to get back to Kristi Noem, and I've got some back-to-back sound here that I want to play for you because, again, don't forget, language from the administration is about no masks, attempting to pass executive orders that you can't wear masks on college campuses, whatever that might be, right? So I would like you to hear how just pathetic it sounds coming from people in leadership positions within the Republican Party. Kristi Noem first, okay? Hold on.
Said masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. Who's going to enforce that and how?
Right.
And how can you justify it when law enforcement officials have their faces covered?
You know, what I would say is that the law is going to be enforced, and that what the laws are in this country is what we are doing, and our ICE officers and our law enforcement officers out there that are in these situations where people have questioned why they have their faces covered. It's for the safety of those individuals or the work that they're doing as far as protecting their identity so they can continue to do investigative work. So,
but are you tasking the National Guard soldiers with removing masks from protesters? I mean, are you trying to use them in that way?
National Guard soldiers are there to provide security for operations and to make sure that we have peaceful protests. So that's what their work is. And I won't get more specific on that just because we never do when it comes to law enforcement operations. We're doing the same standard procedures we always do and have for years in this country with our National Guard and with our, law enforcement folks that are on the ground working with these communities.
What? First of all, what law? So that's Kristi Noem. And then Mike Johnson kind of doubles down on the same bullshit. Again, asked about why ICE agents should be able to, shield their identity.
Mandated mask wearing for years in America. It's absurd. They need to back off of ICE and respect our agents and stop protesting against them.
You're okay with these agents sort of not identifying themselves when they're arresting migrants?
Why? So that they can target them? So they can put their names and faces online and dox them? That's what these activists do.
Yes! Can you believe that? But the question was asked, so you're okay with ICE agents being able to hide their identities? And his response was, why, so people can dox them? How about we'd like to find out if they're actually fucking agents? Because we know that the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, and other white supremacist hate groups have been deputized. We know that. So it could be anybody. It literally could be anybody cosplaying. They could assimilate into the crowd of the brown shirts. They could just walk off the street. They could be a Kyle Rittenhouse in disguise. They could walk up there, have the exact same costume on, and committing federal crimes. I mean, make it make sense. If you don't have anything to hide, as Triple K Caroline tells us every day, the most transparent administration in U.S. history, if that is really true, then why are you hiding?
Did you just throw up from saying her name? I have that same feeling all the time. I thought you.
Have you heard me talk about her cross? So I have this theory, this running joke.
I love that one, Lysandra, whatever her name is, that keeps putting on like traffic cones as crosses. Have you seen the woman that pretends to be her every day on TikTok?
Yes.
Every day it's a different cross.
when I read or when I play some sound from Caroline, because I had this theory that when she's really lying, she doesn't wear her cross, because if she did, it would burn a hole in her chest. When she's just kind of lying, she puts her hand over it so nobody can see that she's wearing one. So that when I play sound or read something from her, I say, oh, by the way, guys, she's not wearing her cross today, or she is wearing her cross today. So now it's becoming something I look for when I look at her press conferences. It's like, uh-oh.
I don't know if I believe I don't know. Like, to me, quite honestly, and this comes from someone who was raised in private Christian school in like evangelical cultish land where people were speaking in tongues and passing out from the Holy Spirit. And I just think nobody, you can't work in the Trump administration and be synonymous with the New Testament and Christianity and what Jesus Christ himself was doing and saying in the New Testament. It's diametrically opposed. So to me, if you're claiming to support Donald Trump and then also alleging to be a Christian, then no, you're not. I mean, truly, you can't be. Like, it just seems like, have you read the New Testament? This is not the Old Testament, an eye for an eye. It's just all very confusing. Here's my other example, though, by the way. I just want to give an example of like states' rights, brother. And again, MAGA, just come up here and have the conversation. Stop. I know you're all thinking in your head that you have something to say, so just let's all have a civil conversation about it. I think modeling, and this is just the teacher in me, I think it's important to have these conversations. So I do welcome anyone who has thoughts about this to have the conversation. And which again, I'll just say this, as someone who can read, and when the big corrupt bill that's going to rob every American, but the 0.1%, or I think you have to make 360,000 when you factor in tariffs to get to make $250. Like at the end of the year. Right. So, I mean, the majority of us are essentially being robbed, especially by that bill. And when I stayed up for 48 hours when that bill was going through the House the first time and being debated in the Rules Committee. So I'm not saying that Margarine is a genius. I actually think she's a fraud in that people were screaming on the House floor before the vote about what Margarine is saying now. She's like, oh, I had no idea that you couldn't, which I agree with. I'm glad that Margarine is speaking up, because for some reason, I think there is a contingent of idiots that do listen to her, whereas everyone else was screaming this. Hey, a lot of this bill is just kickbacks for big oil that bribed Trump, big oil and liquid natural gas, and also for the tech bros, the tech oligarch, the unregulated Wild West tech industry. And one of those rules is no states can regulate AI for 10 years. States' rights, brother. And I actually agree. I agree when people who could read said it in the Rules Committee before they all voted on it. Margarine just, finally found some people to read the bill for her and tell her what was in it. And she's like, wait a minute, what? But yeah, that is a states' rights issue. It's a federalism issue, right? And if you say that you're a proponent of the Federalist Papers and states' rights, brother, then yeah, there is no way in hell we should agree to not regulate AI for 10 years. Understand, if you're a truck driver, which is a pretty good middle to upper middle class, depending on how efficient you are at an income, right, for a family, no, driverless trucks are on the roads now, and they're basically that are operated by AI, and you can't do anything to stop that for 10 years. I mean, AI is endangering our children, and don't worry, you can't regulate that for 10 years. I mean, this is what Trump is trying to do. You guys said that Trump was going to drain the swamp. Trump is growing the size of the swamp and defying federalism, defying states' rights, brother. And so that's my question. You can't have it both ways, right? And this is what I wanted someone to talk about. Just like I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene, or let me just say she agrees with me because I knew about the AI provisions because I could read before she did, right? And she's like, this is crazy. What about states' rights? Same thing with Trump calling up the National Guard. What about states' rights?
Exactly.
That's what we want someone to talk to us about. How, MAGA, why is it states' rights when it's women can't make decisions about their bodies, and states' rights when we're gerrymandering and taking voting rights from brown and black people? Why? And then the minute we're watching a president of the United States turn the U.S. military on American soil, and you guys are silent. That's what I want someone to explain to me. How can you remain logically consistent and not hypocritical and sit here and do this?
Yeah, Felice speaks of it in terms of logical consistency. I look at it as objectivity. Can you just be objective and look at the data and say this is the conversation that we should be having? If it's true for thee, then it's got to be true for me, right? You mentioned the whole. I just want to close this particular section regarding the masks and the whole the rhetoric coming from the administration. So 8 hours ago on Truth Social, in all caps, Trump posted, "Arrest the people in face masks now," looking really bad in LA. In all caps.
Start with ICE. I do agree.
Bring in the troops.
Let's start with ICE.
Yep. And then let's see. Jim McDonald, the highly respected LAPD chief, just stated that the protesters are getting very much more aggressive and that he would, quote, have to reassess the situation as it pertains to bringing in the troops. He doesn't get to make that call, by the way. He should right now. Don't let these thugs get away with this. Thugs. Racist trope, by the way. Don't let these thugs get away with this. Make America great again in all caps. Paid insurrectionists is something he also said. That was about 10 hours ago. Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass should apologize to the people of LA for the absolute horrible job that they've done. And this now includes the ongoing LA riots, not riots, friends, civil rights protests. These are not protesters. They are troublemakers, paid troublemakers and insurrectionists. Remember, no masks. A once great American city, Los Angeles, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. Now violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try and stop our deportation operations. But these lawless riots only strengthen our resolve. I am directing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, in coordination with all other relevant departments and agencies, to take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion. Remember that one? And put an end to these migrant riots. Order will be restored. The illegals will be expelled and Los Angeles will be set free. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Just a couple of thoughts on that. Number one, no, and this just comes I'm indigenous Hispanic. My dad's indigenous Hispanic and black. You can, and no undocumented immigrants are participating in these riots. And if you think they are, that's a really dumb thing to think, right? It's it's studies, right? It's the same way, and because undocumented immigrants don't want to be detected, right? They're 30% less likely than white men in this country to be incarcerated. That's from the Stanford Institute of Economic Policy, but there's many other studies, right? Because undocumented immigrants need to always remain under the radar, they're not participating in these riots. It is idiotic to think they are. Period. They're not. Exactly. They're all in hiding. This is why we're not going to have a food supply, because they're not showing up to work to pick the crops, because you all are geniuses. And that's why, and Trigger, I saw you say this, when, Steve, you were reading and making a cogent point. Trigger said, ask the 77 million Americans that voted for Donald Trump. Listen, there was at least in the swing state I was born and raised in, Arizona, there was nothing on the ballot that said Donald Trump is going to terrorize American citizens. He's going to deny due process. He's going to revoke birthright citizenship. He's going to defy the Constitution at every turn. That was not on the ballot. So again, Trigger, you think you're doing something that you are not doing. It's just logically inconsistent. And I hope this conversation and public shaming encourages you to think harder.
Yeah, Trigger, if you want to come up, we can cuddle and we can have a good conversation. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Send him a request. I think he needs encouragement.
Yeah, I did. I did, yeah. Okay, so all right, let's get into the states' rights conversation because there's so many sort of threads that we can pull on this entire conversation. I've got some more sound to play. We can talk about some things that Pam Bondi said. We can go back and revisit. We're also expecting a visitor, a gentleman we had a conversation with last week, Andrew. He may join us to kind of talk more about Russia, Ukraine, because now we know the president has basically put his hands up saying, I can't fix this. Like, I don't know why I promised people that I would. I was just exaggerating. But we're going to talk about states' rights, brother. The reason we do this is because when Felice started saying that, every time I was watching her live and she said it, I would always comment like with my smiley face or laughy emoji because it cracks me up. But we're here. It's time. States' rights refers to the political and legal concept that U.S. states have certain powers and autonomy that the federal government cannot override. It's rooted in the Constitution, specifically the 10th Amendment, which states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Typically speaking, what states' rights include? Education policy. We'll talk about that briefly because most people, when we watch MAGA Lives, believe that the Federal Department of Education is setting curriculum at Mary Smith Elementary in Walla Walla, Washington. No. The Department of Education does not have a role in curriculum. Their primary functions are civil rights protections and supporting civil rights protections at the public school. Also, I know Felice shaking her head. Also, guaranteed access to federal student loans, support for IEPs and 504 plans or 509, 504. I forget. I think it's a 504, which again provide resources and services for children in public schools who have special needs. So education policy is set at the state level, and very often
you got it right.
Yeah, I thought so. I got it right. I thought so. Thank you, guys. Again, we have the smartest chat on TikTok. Collectively, we determined that last week. Collectively, we have the smartest chat on TikTok. So education policy set by the state. Think Moms of Liberty at school boards. That's an individual
please,
decision.
You got to say it for trigger. Trigger doesn't know trigger what we're talking about when we say IEP and 504 plans. The only thing the Department of Education does is try to create some equity for students, say, with disabilities who need IEP stands for individualized education program, right? Like correct. Certain people are neurodivergent or on the spectrum, need a little extra time, right? Like these are teachers who are overly trained, usually have a master's, and can provide, different specialized plans for students that have different challenges in learning.
Correct. Exactly. Criminal law and policing is something that is dedicated to the states. Think about federal laws regarding 420. In certain states, it's legalized recreationally. In certain states, it's legalized for medicinal purposes only. So states basically have their own laws, whether it be speeding
states' rights, brother.
States' rights, brother. Elections and voting procedures. Now, as a reminder, MAGA, states run federal elections. States can determine how long their voting booths are open, when they can accept mail-in ballots, when they can't accept mail-in ballots, hours of operation. That's up to the state. And again, an element of Project 2025 was to give that power to the federal government. There's no way you should want that.
Something just changed with your sound. Does anyone else hear that? It sounds like your microphone turned off, maybe. Do you guys hear that? Maybe no one else hears it and I hear it. Can someone tell me? Okay, I'm not crazy. Thank you. I'm just making sure everyone's hearing the same thing over here. Okay. Yeah, it just sounded like your microphone went off and then we were just hearing you kind of like talk with your phone microphone or something. Whoopsies. Sorry. Yeah, and I would just like that. The devil's lettuce is a great example. Like I said, I'm a native-born Phoenician. I only say that because very few people are born in Arizona and raised there. And like you could not. Most of our state legislature is Republican. Maricopa County, where most of the inhabitants in Arizona live, is controlled by Republicans, and you will not be able to pry that devil's lettuce out of their cold, dead hands. Like that is an example of when Republicans are like, states' rights, here we go, like we love this. Oh, no problem. Yeah, no problem. I could talk, and that's the weird dichotomy. When states' rights is convenient for Republicans, that they're all about it. Yeah, like, oh, the devil's lettuce feels great. Like, I'm getting older and I would like to be, comfortably numb for 80% of my life. Then they're on board. It starts generating tons of revenue for states. Like, if you don't understand how much revenue if you happen to live in a state where recreational devil's lettuce has been legalized, I mean, it is generating massive amounts of revenue that can then be redirected for, I believe in Arizona, we're redirecting some of it for education and other things. Go ahead. Are you there? No, I can't hear you. It's so weird. It's almost like a cord unplugged. It was just like sudden. So strange. Like, oh yeah, and you're on your phone, not on TikTok. Because I was gonna say, if you're on a computer, check your sound mixer on the computer, but you're not. So this sometimes happens. I know, Florida. You guys almost had the devil's lettuce, so close, but DeSantis ruined it.
I'll just go old school.
All. Yeah, I mean, we can hear you. I think we should start a fund for facts to get in the microphone. Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, it just like your microphone unplugged suddenly. That's what it sounded like.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll just go old school. I'll just let the mic do whatever it's going to do. All right. So we were talking about election and voting procedures, business and commerce regulation within the state, individual commerce laws, interstate commerce laws, business laws. Some people will incorporate in Delaware because they've got very friendly business laws. The state that I live in, not a huge fan of doing business. It's not a business-friendly state. My state, again, and then marriage, family, and health laws. So those are examples of things that are traditionally states' rights issues. States' rights, brother. Historical use for states' rights. Sorry, guys, about the sound. I don't know what it was, but hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Is it working? I know you sound like I'm far away. I understand because you don't have my mic. But
not that far away. It's fine. We'll survive. Oh, I just wanted to say to 1800 Jenny Craig, who said, me saying we need to get Fax a new microphone, right, was grifting. Like, that is the most delusional thing. You are grifted every day by a billionaire, by Donald Trump. Like, and you are sitting here saying that free market capitalism, what you as a conservative say that you want, right? This is an actual marketplace. That's what TikTok is. And everyone can decide what my value is and what his value is. And then when we finally conform, because I'm opposed to free market capitalism, I think it only benefits capitalists. But then when we say, fine, let's engage in free market capitalism, then people whose brains don't work have a problem with it. If you don't want free market capitalism, what is it that you want? Like, come up here and explain to me what it is you want besides free market capitalism. You don't even understand anymore when you contradict yourself. And I would love to know what you look like. 1800 Jenny Craig is your profile name, and I have a suspicion you're a man. Like, I'm not impressed.
Jenny, I just sent you an invitation. You can come up if you'd like. I don't think you probably will, though. But anyway. All right. So again, on the states' rights, brother issue, historical use, pre-Civil War, states' rights were used to justify maintaining slavery in southern states. And we're going to turn that into a conversation around 2A in just a moment, because many folks don't understand our history, our Constitution, and the actual origins of the 2A. Civil rights era, some states invoke states' rights to oppose desegregation and civil rights laws. So states' rights is rooted in racism and white supremacy. So when that term is thrown out there, people who've been paying attention and either are historical resources like my co-host today, or people who've just been paying attention understand what it comes from. And then the modern issues, it's invoked in debates over firearms laws, abortion rights, environmental regulations, drug legalization, as just discussed, in healthcare. Now, supporters argue it protects local control, innovation, and limits federal overreach. Okay, sure. But critics say it's been historically used to defend discrimination and block progress on civil rights and liberties. That part. Anytime this conversation comes up, give it back to the states. Give it back to the states. States' rights. Think about when it's been used just recently. The Dobbs decision is one that people talk about, right? So I guess this is where, again, Felice wants logical consistency and I just want objectivity. You can't have it apply just because it fits to your hateful narrative. So Gavin Newsom,
I think they hold each other's hands, don't they? Logical consistency and objectivity, like they go hand in hand. If you're objective, then you tend to be logically consistent.
That's right. That's right. So like Gavin Newsom, for example, making the statement that if Donald Trump wants to threaten to withhold federal funds, which is a violation of the law, he says, then we just won't support the federal government with our billions of dollars in tax dollars that we pay in every year. Because California contributes so much to our economy and it funds other states. Like I've got a breakdown for you. I just want to go through some of the math here, and we'll get back to this conversation. I was curious about this, and they've done a breakdown by some of the biggest extremes. For example, New Jersey gets 82 cents. A federal return of 82 cents for every dollar they pay. Massachusetts gets 83 cents for every dollar that they pay, meaning that blue states, New Jersey, Massachusetts, California, New York, Connecticut, pay more into the federal government than they get. Conversely, Mississippi, bright red Mississippi, gets $2.10 for every dollar they pay federally. Kentucky, $2.13. West Virginia, $2.15. Alabama, $1.89. South Carolina, $1.79. So when you want to talk about this conversation about states' rights, and you want to make all these criticisms against New York, California, Connecticut, Massachusetts, all those states are funding your budgets. So what if all of a sudden California said, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore? How would you subsidize your already underwater state governments? The answer is you can't. So be careful what you wish for. Be very, very careful what you wish for. All right, back to my list. It's so weird not having sound in my ear.
Can I answer Jenny Craig, who's too terrible? Listen, I'm going to say this one more time and then we're not talking to you. You have two choices. Get up here and defend your incoherent positions. Or, I mean, I don't know. Actually, maybe, I don't know if you should be muted. I'm not a mod here. But you sound idiotic. You're asking me why I'm confused? Because I'm live on Twitch, on X, on YouTube, and people across all these platforms are laughing at you right now. And I was reading, I just remembered, I didn't pull up Twitch and I didn't pull up YouTube. And then I'm literally reading everyone mocking your idiocy, Jenny Craig. That's what I was doing. I was like, man, people really think this guy's an idiot. That's what I was doing. I was watching people laugh at you. So you can come up here and you can defend your incoherent ideas and thoughts, or you can just be a coward, which I think we all know which
one hear me now?
is going. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Or,
Thank
you
very
could
much.
just stay there in the comments and reek of insecurity. I can literally smell your insecurity.
Okay, so I want to get into more back to the specifics around some of the states' rights conversations. We talked about education policy, criminal law and policing, elections and voting procedures, business and commerce regulations within the state, and then marriage, family, and health. Pre-Civil War, states' rights again justify maintaining slavery in southern states. Civil rights era, some states invoke states' rights to oppose desegregation in civil rights laws, and then modern issues, it's invoked in debates regarding gun laws, abortion rights, environmental regulation, drug legalization.
Finally.
Okay. Jenny Craig.
Why don't you tend to your dog instead of having him bark?
My dog's fine. Don't worry about it. Well, he's happy.
Oh, dogs bark when they're happy like that?
Mine does.
Is that you with the ball gag in your mouth? That explains a lot.
Is it Skippy Creamy or Skippy with peanuts in it?
Okay, so Jenny, do you maybe if there I don't know if you've ever had an intellectual conversation in your life. Maybe
no,
this
I actually
is the first
haven't.
one.
So maybe today we can.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
So why are you just chirping? What issue do you have with myself and Felice? What's the issue?
Oh, I don't have any.
Why are you chirping though?
Chirping about what?
I don't care about that. What, like, do you want to have, I want to have like an intellectual conversation. Like, do you have a claim when you're saying we don't know what we're talking about? Yeah. Like, what is it?
What is it that we don't know?
What is it that we're incorrect about? That's what I'm curious about.
Did I say we're incorrect? Or did I say
that's what
everything we're talking about is nonsense?
We're just
like what?
Well, I mean, those are synonyms of each other.
Do you think
what is
one implies the other?
States' rights and stuff on your stupid who pays how much percent and state. You think that that's what's important right now, or do you think that there's more important stuff going on?
We think that there's a lot more important stuff, but we're talking about the structural economic differences about how blue states support red states in our country.
Hey, if we're overran, does any of this matter?
I'm not done talking. So when we're having a conversation, I'm not done talking. When we're having a conversation about states' rights, this is part of an intellectual conversation requires context and nuance. So we are introducing context and nuance.
Right, but before you advance to context and nuance, you should know the basics.
Of what? Please explain to us what the basics are.
I've asked you nicely, what are the basics that we're missing? So Ed, you inform us what we're missing. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, what are we missing?
So do we have a safe country now? Do we have travel bans?
Yeah.
Are we getting rid of illegals? Are we banning trans?
Can I answer? Well, can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? You asked me if we have a safe country
Felice, real quick, let me just set some ground rules real quick. So Jenny, all we ask is that we just don't overtalk because it's not fair to the people that are listening. So if myself or Felice or you, we will give you the courtesy as well. Just don't overtalk. Okay, that's all we ask. Fair enough?
Totally fair. Thank you.
Awesome. Go ahead, Felice.
Do we have a safe country? Like the height of crime in the United States was 2022. One of the primary drivers of crime is poverty.
I just asked if we have a safe country.
Wait, hold on. During the height of inflation, during the height of...
We don't care about stats. I'm asking currently.
Okay, again, well, listen,
people who... interrupt.
Let me just be clear. People whose brains work...
You're making me dumber by listening.
Jenny, stop.
Just let me answer your question, and then you can continue yelling your feelings. It's okay.
Again,
but just you have to let me talk.
Hang on one second, Felice. Hang on one second.
I apologize.
Jenny, just stop. Okay, we brought you up, which means we're interested in having a conversation.
Can you just
allow that to happen? Okay. Yes, I will.
Yeah. Like here's the deal. You are yelling your feelings, which cool, but most of us whose brains work, we use logic, reason, and data. Right?
Get to the point.
Again, be quiet. So the height of crime in the United States was 2022. People who can track data, people who can track data sets know that there is no correlation whatsoever between immigration and crime. It's mathematically inconsistent to say that there is. Period. Yeah. So, and again, I want this conversation to continue. Again, though, you are yelling your feelings when you say, I don't care about data. What you're saying is, I have actually no positions that are based in primary resources, and I'm just going to be hysterically yelling my feelings. So, my advice to you would be to present some primary sources or data sets.
Honey, if I took your advice, I'd be you. So
I'm sorry, what did you say? Did you just call her honey?
No, he said if I took your advice, I'd be you. I don't know. I don't care. Like, you don't need to, it's fine.
Okay, so Jenny,
you can't get caught up on every insecure man in that.
Jenny, I guess
offensive.
I guess the issue, this is the issue that we're kind of having here. Like, we're trying to have a conversation. It just doesn't seem like you want to have a conversation. Like, you want to try to hijack it and turn it into something that supports a narrative that you've been told. Now, what Felice was pointing out, this has been studied. So do you not believe that poverty is one of the main driving factors behind crime?
50-50.
You mean it's 50-50 you believe that or not?
I mean, it's a fact. So
okay.
You're living outside of reality.
Just think about it. Like if you were in a situation, do you have kids? You don't have to get too personal if you don't want to answer. You don't have to. Do you have children?
I wanted them, but I don't have them.
Okay, so if you did, like I do, I've got 3. Okay, now if I was in a situation where I lost my job
and my girlfriend couldn't get pregnant, but anyway, good. Sorry.
Okay, that was enough of that. You can just leave now.
I think this is a good learning moment. Like, just understand, this is the intelligence level of MAGA. This is where they're at. They have no idea what they're talking about. They can't form a coherent sentence. So then they move to ad homs, and it's just, hey, you're having a lot of feelings, buddy, and I think you need to work through those. But my suggestion is, if you want to have political opinions, you should base them in data and fact, not your intense feelings about being an incel.
That's represent exactly, somebody just said, a perfect reflection of your party. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. So we've got another request. We'll bring up Patrick. And we've got a lot to cover, friends, but we're
Patrick, don't be inappropriate. I feel like we're kind of friends, aren't we? We're a little bit friendly.
So Patrick, I have one request, because there's 1,500 people in here and people like to engage in conversations. If Felice is talking or if I'm talking, please don't interrupt us, and we will show you the same courtesy. Please just try to be an adult and have an adult conversation. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. So what is it that you would like to discuss?
The LA riots. It's ridiculous. Burning the American flag.
Okay, you call them riots.
Yeah.
Why would you choose to call them riots?
Because they're burning cars for no reason, and they're just destroying property, which is uncivilized.
So you think destroying property and beating up police officers, you would call that a riot?
Yeah.
So was January 6th a riot?
January 6th was a scuffle. It wasn't like a riot. Why are you comparing January 6th to now?
Because I just asked you the question. I'm asking you to be objective. I'm just trying to see where you sit, all right? Because I just asked you the question.
Well, January 6th people
don't interrupt. We just agreed. I just asked you a simple question. I'm trying to see where your mind works. Yeah. I asked you specifically if you felt beating up police officers and destroying property, you would classify as a riot. So I asked you, would you classify January 6th as the same? Because were police officers not beat up that day? Was property not destroyed?
Yes, there was, and that was wrong too.
Okay, so was that a riot?
It was wrong. It wasn't a big riot as LA.
Okay, so it wasn't, but it was a riot?
Not as big as LA.
Okay, so again, do you understand why this is a frustrating conversation for us? Because what you're talking about is people protesting illegal detainment and deportation of persons in our country, compared to what was obviously an insurrection, a violent attempt and or uprising, an attempt to overthrow the government or authority. Now, and I don't know why, like Felice just talks about, we're looking for logical consistency and objectivity. How can you look at the events of January 6th and call that less than what we're seeing in LA? And then don't forget, Donald Trump pardoned everybody involved. So then if we're going to use that same line of logic, if people are arrested in LA, should the president grant them pardons as well?
You're so obsessed with January 6th.
Answer the question, man. Just answer the question, please.
No, you're delusional because you're always bringing up the past, and it was small compared to LA.
Because your history rhymes. It's called historical context. Okay? So can you answer my question, please?
My question is, why are you comparing January 6th?
Can you answer my question, please?
About what?
The question that I just asked you. If the president of the United States can pardon 1,500 people who beat up police officers and engaged in insurrection, those people can be pardoned. But if people are arrested in LA after many of them have just been rounded up by police paddy wagons and they're either charged and or convicted of crimes, should the president pardon them as well?
Comparing apple and oranges.
I just want to provide some data because I'm just looking, and this is just like initial, because again, we don't know the full amount, but this is pulling from police records. So this weekend, as a result of the 3 days of protest, if you count Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there's not an exact number, but it's dozens of people have been arrested in Los Angeles following days of protest where police and protesters clashed. More specifically, police made at least 10 arrests on Sunday and 29 the previous night, and then I was just looking up, over 1,500 people were arrested and charged with federal crimes in connection with January 6th. So I think that when you look at and I'm saying this just as someone who worked in advertising, when you look at like the coverage of what's happening in LA, it looks insane. But the actual amount of people who are engaging in violence are much smaller than you think versus actually just protesting in the streets. And then the full size of LA County, I think a lot of people who don't understand the size of Los Angeles think something large is going on. Like, I promise you, 95% of the people in Los Angeles probably were just going about their business.
Yeah, and so that's... Go ahead, Patrick. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think you're obsessed with January 6th, and you just can't let go of it.
No, that's your feeling. You feel that way, Patrick. Yeah, you feel that way. Which, okay, I agree. I validate your feeling. Like, so.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to oppose your feelings.
We're trying to find though is where this is the issue that I have is it just you can't be objective. If you want to look at the same things, I'll give you another example. And this is why you make. Well, this is why you make comparisons, okay? So the president of the United States calling in the National Guard to LA. Why did he not call in the National Guard to DC?
Comparing apple to oranges.
Can you just answer the question, please?
No, because it's a ridiculous question.
It's not. You just don't want to answer.
Oh, yeah. It's like comparing.
Can I tell you my theory? Can I tell you my theory? Can I tell you my theory?
What's your theory?
Are you interested in hearing that?
Yeah, it's probably Louis.
I want to hear it. I do.
Okay, my theory regarding as to why he would call in the National Guard in Los Angeles is because he despises Gavin Newsom, and he wants to use this to flex his muscle. And those people there that are protesting are pushing back against Trump administration policies, as opposed to the insurrection in D.C., because those people in D.C. that committed those crimes that day were there to support him. That's my theory.
If you are here illegally, you broke the law.
What law did he break?
If you are here illegally, you have broken the law.
What law did they break?
Being here illegally, that's the law. The law is the law.
What law, though? What law did they break?
What law? What? It's illegal to be here illegally. So they're
okay. But so if you get busted for speeding, are you an illegal speeder?
You get busted for speeding. You can't compare.
Okay, so it is because it's a misdemeanor.
It's the same It's the same civil code. Yeah, it's
a civil code violation.
It's a misdemeanor.
Yes.
Did you know that?
I knew that.
Okay, so then again, that's my point. So I'm just curious. Can we go back to the question that I asked you, though? My theory. The reason that the National Guard wasn't called into D.C. is because those people were there, and don't forget, he was watching it on TV. He was celebrating it. So that those people were there to support him. He told them he loved them. He told them he loved them.
Do you think Trump liked what happened in January 6th? I don't think so.
Absolutely. I think he loved it.
No, I think, listen, hold on. Can I just say something? I'll defend, and I've done this before. I actually, on a certain level, and I've read every court document around January 6th.
And they went in jail for a long time.
Well, wait, let me just finish. I actually don't blame the average January 6er. That's not who I'm personally mad at. I'm not saying I think, right, like apples to oranges, they do. I mean, if you commit a crime, if you break into, especially the U.S. Capitol, and threaten the lives of Congress people, I mean, you got to be prepared for what comes next. But yeah, I think they were, incited and directed to do that. And the people that should be held responsible for that have never been held responsible. Truly, the leaders of that, like the Ron Johnsons, the Pete Sessions, the actual people who were held or who orchestrated that and led those people to be there and to do that have never been held responsible. That's what I can say for the J6ers. Yep. I think people wanted them to do what they did, orchestrated it, and then they were I find it really ironic in America that it's like the lowest tier of people in the orchestrated plan that are ever held responsible.
Yeah, but people come here and illegally and commit crimes and they get a free ride. Nice.
Okay, but again, we're moving off the topic, though.
Let's talk about that.
Let's stay on the topic, Patrick.
Let's stay on the topic. You wanted to go off topic, but I can't.
No, because we did veer off a little bit. I mean, his point was,
I didn't get a chance to finish my point.
We were talking about it being a misdemeanor.
Right, I didn't get a chance to finish my point. So the issue that we're talking about is I was asking you what crime that they committed, and we were still. So you kind of moved the goalpost a little bit in regard to the conversation regarding my theory. So I don't think you addressed that. So if you don't want to address that, I can understand why. But then we can move into the conversation about immigration, if you'd like. Would that be easier for you?
You could talk about anything.
Okay, so again, were the people there protesting on January 6th there in support of Trump? Yes or no?
Yes, but
okay. Were the people in LA protesting? Were they supportive or opposed to Donald Trump immigration policies?
Opposed.
Okay, so then can you see why there would be a difference as to why the National Guard might be called in?
No.
You don't see a difference? So he called them in, violating the Constitution, by the way.
I think the problem is you're obsessed with January 6th, and you just can't.
No, I'm obsessed with people who can't be objective. That's the issue I have,
You're obsessed with January 6th.
No, I'm not.
That was like 4 years ago.
I'm not upset with it, my friend. I think it's disgusting. No, I'm not. I'm not. Okay.
You feel that way, Patrick, which we already, we validated your feeling on that.
4 years ago.
Yeah, but okay, Seriously? Patrick, your only claim can't be your feelings.
Guy. Yeah. You're the one still talking about it.
We already validated your feeling.
Not me.
Patrick, we validated. Can I make a point? I just want to make a point. My issue, my problem personally, like Patrick, you're saying people who enter this country illegally are here illegally. What we know is, and I'm quoting a libertarian a far right think tank, the Cato Institute, right? We know, and I'm just talking about the people Trump illegally sent to a concentration camp in Sicko in El Salvador, right? We now know, and not because I don't want to give the impression they all entered the U.S. illegally. 80 plus, we just have no information on. But we know for sure that 50 plus of the people who are sitting in Sicko right now entered the U.S. legally. And in addition to that, have never committed a crime in the United States. They entered legally. They never committed a crime. And this is a right-wing think tank research paper called 50 plus Venezuelans imprisoned in El Salvador came to U.S. legally, never violated immigration law. It's from May 19th. And I'm going to send it to everyone in my Discord. In fact, I'll send it to you so you can send it to people in the Discord. So that's my issue. And the only way we figure these things out is through due process, right? It's when we have our day in court and say, no, like maybe some of these people, wait, Patrick, no, hold on. And now we need to go back a little further because you have a misunderstanding of the Constitution. The Constitution, all persons have due process. It has nothing to do with U.S. citizenship, period.
Correct.
All persons. That's why, like, we go, we can go on vacation to other democratic countries and we can't just be thrown in jail. And when people are denying, like when countries are denying due process, that's when we put travel warnings and we say, U.S. citizens, don't go to Russia. They're denying due process and disappearing people. Or don't go to the Middle East. They're denying due process and disappearing people. That's why. It has nothing to do with citizenship, whether or not, if we point at someone as the U.S. government and say, you did this, everyone gets a chance to say, no, I didn't. Here's my evidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking for, Patrick. We're just looking for consistency. It's like, so is your issue that they entered the country illegally?
Yes.
Okay, so then again, the reason that we use history is because we can make examples in our quest to find objectivity. Did the January 6th insurrectionists enter the Capitol illegally?
Yes, they do, and they get they get thrown in jail and stay in long periods of time.
Right, because they commit. And what did they get? But what did they get though? What did the people put in jail get?
Thrown in jail, and they stayed in jail.
No, they got due process, friend. Many of them, in fact, most of them committed to their crime. They all had court cases. They got due process. That's all we're talking about. Let's just make it consistent.
No, but a jury of their peers, but they had a jury that said, we have looked at all the evidence and you did this, we convict you of it unanimously.
That's right.
Do you think Bin Laden gets due process?
Who?
Bin Laden? Do you think Bin Laden gets
He was not on U.S. soil. You have a misunderstanding. Yeah, you have to be on U.S. soil. All persons on U.S. soil. You have a misunderstanding of the law.
You commit a crime, you get deported if you hear.
All persons on U.S. soil get due process. Look at Guantanamo. Why is it not on U.S. soil? Why is it on Cuban soil? It's because we can, to some extent, avoid due process. But even there, we can't get rid of these hijackers from 9/11 because they even get military tribunals.
So again, Patrick, if you value the Constitution, you may not like it. Now, I think we can come up with an objective understanding that you may not like the fact that undocumented migrants get due process.
Illegals, but not undocumented.
Undocumented. We don't know. No humans
you're
illegal.
Changing the language.
No, you can't. Not here. It's if you can do that someplace else. For this conversation, it's undocumented.
No, because you like immigrants more, immigrants more than American citizens.
Don't rage quit, man. We're having a decent conversation. Just try to stay. Just namaste, brother. Just namaste.
We validate. You feel like we value undocumented immigrants more than U.S. citizens. So again, Patrick, I validate that feeling. It just, that's not our reality.
It is.
Okay, Patrick, I validate your feelings.
For this conversation, Patrick, I am just asking you, if you'd like to have your own live, you can call whatever you want. If you want to call them migrants, we'll call them migrants. You may not like the fact that they're entitled to due process, but that's what the Constitution says. So again, in our quest to find logical consistency and objectivity, we just ask that everybody be treated the same way. So if you believe that the people who committed the violence, the insurrectionists on January 6th, they got their due process, whether they're citizens or not. The Constitution is brilliant in how it lays out the difference between what a citizen is and what a person is. According to the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, the 5th Amendment, all persons on U.S. soil are entitled to the same rights. That's all we are asking. That's all we are asking. I'm not defending anybody. Criminality is criminality. But I believe in the rule of law, and I believe in the Constitution. I believe that Donald Trump should have had his day in court. I believe that Hunter Biden should have his day in court. I don't give a shit who it is. I just believe in the protections granted to every person, which is due process, habeas corpus. That's all we're asking for. That's it. If you believe in the Constitution, then you have to believe that.
If you're an illegal and you commit a crime, you get deported.
After court.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
after court.
Let's wait. Hold on. Okay, Patrick, yes, I hear you, and I'm going to address what you said, but I just want to point out what Steve said. The habeas corpus, right? Saying that the federal government can't just point at any one of us, U.S. citizens, or people on travel visas, or people attending college here on student visas, or legal permanent residents who are married to a U.S. citizen, whatever the case may be. We never want the federal government to just be able to point at any one of us and say, you did this, I say you did it, so it's true, and now I'm going to disappear you. Because the habeas corpus is the only thing between us and authoritarian fascism.
It's not authoritarian. If somebody comes in this country and the visa starts trouble, you get deported.
That's not how it works.
You're incorrect.
No.
You're incorrect.
So, Patrick, let me explain the difference, Patrick, let me help you. If that's true, let me just say, if that's true, like let's take a 9/11 hijack, whatever you want to say, people who would enter this country for nefarious purposes. Sure, but what happens, the process for that is then the federal government says, we accuse you of this crime. We're indicting you. We're charging you with this crime, and you get to mount a defense, right? That's the only difference, Patrick. The only thing that makes us a civilized society. We're not saying don't investigate, don't speculate, don't keep people safe. The only difference is we don't want to be in a situation where the federal government just says, I don't like you, right? Because where we are at now is violence in the name of Donald Trump, J6, full pardon. Violence in the name of what Donald Trump doesn't like, you're going to prison. And that's hypocritical, right?
Well, you're supporting anti-Semites coming from overseas
No,
that are,
we're not,
this
Patrick. No,
Yes, you are.
I do love
Patrick,
this
you don't need to go there.
conversation.
Patrick, you don't need to go there. Okay, listen.
Yeah, you're anti-Semites too. You support
No, we're not.
Muslims coming here and bashing Israel.
Okay, well,
We're
I
not-
can
we're not
provide you
anti-Semites.
proof of anti-Semites
So-
that exist
yeah,
inside
so
Trump's
hang on one second.
administration.
Right.
Hang on one second, Felice. So,
Jewish.
Patrick, here-
No, I
this
can
is-
right now
Patrick,
provide you proof of it.
Hang on one second, Patrick. This is
Blood
the issue.
libel.
See, this is we're trying to have a conversation that's rooted in fact, and you don't want to, because as Felice has pointed out correctly, you are focused on your feelings and your beliefs. Okay, what we are trying to point out, and this is what we experience when we talk to people on the right, because the Constitution in this case doesn't align with what you want. You believe that we should just throw it out. All we are saying is that, so for example, I'm not going to tokenize my friend Felice, but if Felice was identified and profiled, she could be mistaken as someone of Hispanic descent, which she does have. Now, she could be profiled. She could look like somebody else. She could be profiled. Should she not get the ability to go to court? Yes or no?
Yeah, because she's a U.S. citizen.
How would you know that unless you brought somebody to court? That's due process.
Yes, they will know that she's a citizen.
How? How would they know?
Information. What do you think? Why are you asking these
How would they know?
Oh,
how would they know that? How would they know?
Her ID, her license.
What if she didn't have? What if she didn't have her ID?
Well, then her passport.
What if she didn't have a passport?
Well, then that's her problem.
Okay, but doesn't she get her day in court?
Yes, but if she can't provide ID, that's her problem.
Should she just be deported then?
What do you mean deported?
You
She's
said
got to show ID.
if you're here illegally. Let me just finish this line of thought. Let me just finish the line.
What if you're doing what if situations, which is ridiculous?
No, I'm talking about reality.
You're not. You're talking about what if.
I am. This is exactly why we're saying
Patrick,
people should be entitled to due process.
Right, Rumeysa Ozturk, a PhD student who has never been to a Hold on, I'm not done. Hold on. No, that's why she's no longer in jail, because she had never done any. She'd never. And by the way, Patrick, I've read the court documents, and she's no longer in jail.
I'm going to pause real quick. I want to pause real quick. I want to go back to the conversation we were just having. I'm sorry. I just want to finish this one. Point, Patrick, please. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about due process. Okay. So the scenario I gave you is what's happening. So should Felice not get her day in court? Yes or no?
You're doing fictional stories. Okay.
I'm not. This is real.
You're saying what ifs. Don't play games with the what ifs.
That's not what ifs. This is real. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, that's why I tried. No, can you? Why?
No, I'm done. Because I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Well, that's why I was going to give real example. Okay.
It doesn't matter. He leaned in on the anti-Semite bullshit numerous times. I'm not going to bother. Anyway, that's an example, friends. So the two people we've had up here this morning.
Okay, wait, can I just say something really quick?
Sure.
Oh, thanks. Okay. I just wanted to submit, again, this is an NPR article from May 14th, 2025. Multiple Trump White House officials have ties to anti-Semitic extremists. I know, my Discord's interested in research. And there's many more. I could provide many more resources, primary resources. It's come out in court documents that the Trump administration is harboring real anti-Semites, actual anti-Semites. Not, hey, if you don't think brown people in the Middle East should be genocided in an open-air prison, then you're an anti-Semite. Not those types. I'm talking about actual anti-Semites who espouse mustache man rhetoric. So again, if anyone's interested in the source, multiple Trump White House officials have ties to anti-Semitic extremists. It is delusional to say that. And again, there are countless examples of people in the U.S. illegally who have been, the federal government has pointed at them and said, you did something. And after further investigation, it turned out that they did not. Right? And none of us, an erosion of any rights, an erosion of habeas corpus is an erosion of all of our due process rights. And I challenge MAGA to be smart enough to recognize that.
All right. So the reason I he wasn't gonna leave off his feelings. It just felt like a waste of our time, and I saw that Andrew had requested anyways. Good morning, Andrew. Welcome back.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
It's going well. It's going well. I want to just kind of, if we could, just level set on where our conversation ended last week, because we were talking about Ukraine and Russia specifically, and we gave you numerous examples of the NATO charter. We talked about why and how any country can submit a request to join NATO. We went through the countries that had recently joined NATO, many of them on the border. We talked about Russian propaganda. We cited the expert, and you seemed like you were struggling with that, and then you kind of leaned in on some anti-Semitic tropes with the whole George Soros thing. So I'd like to have, if possible, I'd like us to have an intellectual conversation. And if you don't know the answer to something, or if you want to find out more information, please just ask. That's all we're asking for, right? And I have just a couple of rules. We're not going to talk over, because that happened a lot last week, and that makes it impossible for the chat to follow along. So if Felice is talking or if I'm talking, please let us talk, and we will do you the same courtesy. Fair enough?
That's fair. All right, two things though.
I'm not quite done. Last thing: if you make a claim for something, it is on you on either one of us to back it up, and we don't answer questions with questions. So no whataboutisms. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Can we also talk about what you guys were just talking about afterwards?
Yeah, no.
What specifically?
Well, can we?
Yeah, like the immigration?
I'm kind of on this line of logic. I'd prefer to. I mean, it's all tied together in different ways anyways.
Yeah, exactly. The LA riots, like that.
Do you think the riots?
Situation. Yeah.
Do you think the riots?
I'd like to get your perspectives on it, because obviously I respect the intelligence that you guys have.
Not mine, apparently. You did a video. You said Felice was very smart.
Okay, let's just give the background. Andrew, I've not seen the video, because if I watched every video MAGA tagged me in, I would never, ever. I'm not calling Andrew. I don't know what your political beliefs are, actually, so maybe you don't want to be saddled with that label. I won't saddle you with that label unnecessarily. I don't know what the video said. Facts only told me yesterday, but yeah, apparently it said something like Felice is smart. Why is she hanging around Facts? Is that correct?
Yeah, you said that, Andrew. So now you think I'm smart? That's okay. We don't have to go back in time. But anyway,
that's not what I said. I said Felice is very smart. So I'm surprised that she posted the video that shows that they were calling Biden a weak president.
No, you called me out in the video. I've got the video on my page, my guy. We don't have to go there. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so we were talking about, do you want to continue our conversation regarding Russia, Ukraine, or do you want to have the conversation about the LA? And I'm curious as to what you think a riot is, by the way. So which would you like to do?
Either way, I would like to talk to you guys about the LA stuff, just because it's more current, and I don't want to derail the conversation that you guys have been having.
Okay,
I'm good with
that. That's fair. That's fair. So what is your opinion? Again, we want this conversation to be objective, right? You can't have a good faith conversation if it's just about feelings. Okay, so we got to have a conversation that's rooted in the data. Fair enough. We can have an opinion. We can have an opinion on things, but opinion is not fact. Would you agree?
I'd agree.
Okay, so what is your opinion on what's happening in LA?
So I want to preface this by saying that I think that what we're seeing right now is a dangerous road for the Trump admin to go down, only because it opens the door for future administrations to push the barrier back to what's happened so far. And I can see where they can make the argument for sending in the National Guard. But
where? So let's talk about that. On what, though? What's the argument to send in? First of all, do you understand the process of federalizing the National Guard?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
Well, if I was Trump's lawyer, I would argue that under U.S. Code 10, Title 10 U.S. Code, Section 252 and Section 253, it allows the president in both of those to authorize the National Guard or military how he did.
Under what conditions, though? Because there are conditions.
Using 12406, though, just to be clear, he's authorizing it under 12406, which I can't. I wish if I would send it to you if I could. But yeah, it's 10 USC 12406.
That's what they're using. So that's what, again, but would you agree, Andrew, that there are conditions connected to that?
Yeah, and so like Section 252 is whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages or rebellion against the authority of the United States make it impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States in any state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, he may call into federal service such the militia of any state and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or to suppress the rebellion.
So these are the rules in which when the National Guard can be federalized. War or national emergency? Does that apply in LA?
That's what I was referring to, where you start to.
I'm just asking you. I'm asking you. Does that apply? War or national emergency?
In my opinion, is what's going on in LA a national emergency?
That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to be objective. Is it war or national emergency?
In my opinion, it's not a national emergency yet.
Okay. Fair enough. So then that would not then allow the National Guard to be federalized. Can we agree?
Which, just for the record, nearest I can tell, there were 10 arrests. Police made at least 10 arrests on Sunday and 29 on Saturday. Like, that's definitely, especially if you have been to LA, that's business as usual.
So then can we agree that it's not war or national emergency? In your words, you said yeah.
In my opinion, yes.
Okay. So then to enforce federal laws, what federal laws are being broken?
Deportation orders that were executed with search warrants.
Not, again, specifically in regards to the protests in LA, because you're calling in the National Guard in an attempt to federalize. What federal laws are being broken to justify calling in the National Guard?
So that would refer to Section 253, 252, where legal proceedings are being impeded.
Are they?
Yeah, there's news coverage stating that. Let me see exactly how they word it. According to Homeland Security on Saturday night,
according to Homeland Security. So do you think it's unbiased?
U.S. Today.
Andrew,
what
do you think a statement from the Trump administration's National Security Department is unbiased? Objectively, just objectively.
if you let me finish reading the paragraph, and then we can discuss whether they're going to lie.
Andrew, can I just say how great it is that you can read? Can we all just
I agree.
Just point out that Andrew can read. So that makes you better than most of the people we talk to. Thank you for reading.
I appreciate that. I do not identify as full-blood MAGA, just for the record. So
we'll see. Well, I hope so. We'll see. Again, so go ahead and finish.
So what this news article says is, according to Homeland Security, on Saturday night, rioters surrounded the Immigration Services Building and Detention Center, assaulted ICE law enforcement officers, slashed tires, defaced buildings, and taxpayer-funded property. In response, Trump signed a presidential memorandum deploying at least 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles. If that's factual, then I think that there's precedence for him to send in the National Guard.
Okay, so again, now the question that I asked you, so coming from the Trump administration's Department of Homeland Security. So again, if we're thinking about this objectively, and you have the ability to do that, you've proven that today. Wouldn't it make sense that the Trump administration, who wants to initiate these policies, would use their own agency to attempt to justify what they're doing? Like, do you think it's truly objective?
And so this is my problem with the Trump administration right now.
Can you just answer that question first, and then we'll go to the stuff. I asked you a direct question. Remember, we said we're not going to answer questions with questions. Do you think it's truly objective?
Well, I wasn't answering it with a question. I think that if federal officers are lying, then there should be some kind of disciplinary action.
I would agree. I would agree. So then, I would agree. So then, what you're saying is that it's not objective what they're telling you.
I would say that if we're going to
not take what their statements are as truthful until proven not truthful, then that's a dangerous road to go by, because then we're just speaking in bias.
Can I give, I've been looking up information, so I want to correct, because I think, so I just want to give, me, I used to be a historical researcher, so I'm really good at finding information. So I want to correct my previous numbers. Here's what my new updated numbers, because these are coming, I'm looking up the LAPD arrests now. So there were 29 arrests on Saturday, 27 arrests on Sunday, and then separately, and I was doing some protests broke out in San Francisco, which San Francisco is policed much differently now, especially nowadays. I used to live there. 60 people were arrested in San Francisco on Sunday. So we're still, more or less underneath 100 people being arrested in a protest. And I'm just saying, and again, I think the 1992 Los Angeles Watts quote unquote riots were actually, they used the word riot to justify, but even then the National Guard wasn't called out. And those protests, the city was burning in 1992 and the National Guard wasn't invoked. So what I'm trying to do here is just use the actual arrest data to show this is much more isolated. And just let me use one more data set to just level set with people, because I think this is also good. If I don't know how many people understand why they started these protests. What happened is Tom Homan, and I think Fax, you and I spoke about this briefly. Tom Homan and Stephen Miller started to be like, this isn't enough arrests. This isn't enough arrests. Why aren't you guys outside of Home Depots targeting get outside Home Depots and target Hispanic people who are standing out there. So what happened was, CBS News reported that recent operations took place in Westlake. If you understand, these are upper middle class areas. Westlake's a nice ass place. District, as well as Paramount south of LA, where the population is more than 82% Hispanic. There were also reports of an ICE raid at a Home Depot shop in Paramount, which officials, so initially federal officials said, we didn't do that. And then after the fact, they went back and said, we arrested 44 unauthorized immigrants were arrested in a single operation, and another 77 were also arrested in the greater LA area on the same day. So there was an ICE operation going on, and more undocumented immigrants were snatched up than people arrested protesting. I just want to level set on actual numbers.
Yeah. So again, Andrew, the question then becomes this statement, which you're citing from the Department of Homeland Security, which is the Trump administration, in an attempt to do what Felice was just talking about. Stephen Miller and Tom Homan have both gone public saying, don't forget, they told us that it was only going to be about criminal aliens. It was only going to be about the criminals. So then why would they be talking about going to Home Depot? Why would they be talking about going to 7-Eleven? So again, I'm asking you to be objective. Do you think there's any bias connected to what that statement is?
I think that I think there's problems when we don't have all the information, when we don't know why they were going to Home Depot or who they were going after. So that's where, if they had information that that's where the person that they were going after was going to be, then that's where they're going to pick them up.
That's not the question I asked you, though. We'll talk about that in a second. So what I'm and I feel like you want to answer, but I just don't know if you're willing to do it here publicly, because the answer is it's obviously not. So I'll give you a perfect example. Were you a Joe Biden supporter?
No. Well,
okay. If a statement,
when he was the president,
I understand that.
I support the president of the United States, no matter who.
Okay, but if a statement came out from the Biden administration and they said something through either their Department of Homeland Security or their FBI or whatever it might be, would you believe there would be any bias connected to that?
I other than wordings, differently than no, I don't.
No bias.
Yeah, I think that there can be bias with the way things are worded. So I don't. I think that there can be. There certainly can be. So I think
So what you're saying is that we're supposed to trust the Trump Department of Homeland Security when they've already been violating people's laws, like for example, illegally deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia illegally. So you're saying you're asking people to accept what the Department of Homeland Security is telling us to be the word, to be factual, to be accurate.
Well,
that's why we're struggling to have an objective conversation, because I think you know that.
What I was trying to say before was that my problem with the Trump administration is we know on federal buildings there's cameras. And I understand why you wouldn't release it yet, because the stuff is still going on. But why not release the footage of the rioters surrounding the Immigration Services Building and Detention Center? Why not the body cam footage of the ICE law officers getting attacked? Why not release the camera footage from the vehicles, the federal law enforcement vehicles that we know have dash cams on them?
Right. Why do ICE agents wear masks? Why are they wearing masks?
Well, that is all right. So I do want to say, I think the statement of protesters can't wear masks is idiotic.
Of course it is.
I think that ICE agents should be allowed to wear masks. I think protesters should be allowed to wear masks. I think the dangerous line is the obvious, if there's undeputized ICE agents or
how do we know?
Exactly. But I think that that's where it gets very difficult, because at what's the fine line where when ICE agents are trying to do their job that they've agreed to do, and then they're getting doxxed and their families are getting
okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that quickly. That's a claim, though. That's a claim that ICE agents are getting doxxed. We could also say that people who have brown skin in our country are being racially profiled, right? So what's the difference?
I think that's not a fair statement, only for the fact
it's not.
Well,
you don't think people are being racially profiled?
There's deportations to every country.
Both things can be true, right?
Of course they can.
I mean, yeah, I think they are.
I'm not going to sit here and say there's no discrimination happening. There's no racism, obviously, or sexism. There's obviously that stuff still rooted in this country.
Of course there is.
To suggest that there's none of that going on is ridiculous.
Right.
Just like to suggest that all of the people that went to protest in LA are, violent or causing problems. They're not all doing, it's a small percentage of the larger group. So just like at J6. So
can I just cite one piece of, and this just came out 11 hours ago. La Migra day laborers recount ICE raid outside Los Angeles Home Depot. Workers who witnessed the raid say these are Home Depot employees, say officers arbitrarily grabbed and detained migrants. The immigration sweep was one of several that sparked a wave of unrest. Yeah. So I'll send this article to everyone in my Discord as well.
Thank you. So Patrick, this is a statement from the president on Truth Social. Again, this is the president of the United States. Do you ever spend time on Truth Social at all, Andrew?
So I do have Truth Social. I'll get the notification. I'll look to see what he said. I don't go at his post.
Okay, this is what he said. A once great American city, Los Angeles, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. Now violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try and stop our deportation operations. But these lawless riots only strengthen our resolve. I am directing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, in coordination with all other relevant departments and agencies, to take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion and put an end to these migrant riots. Order will be restored, the illegals will be expelled, and Los Angeles will be set free. Thank you for your attention to this matter. What is your reaction to that?
What time of day?
He sent that last night. It was 15 hours ago.
All right. So so this is where I say it's a dangerous road. We're blurring the lines, because Friday night the LAPD declared an unlawful assembly and ordered the crowd to disperse, and then
LAPD
blocks, concrete blocks started to get thrown. So
LAPD, of course,
that's
within their jurisdiction, right?
Yep, absolutely. And so then nearly 24 hours later was when the supposed stuff happened at the detention center with the ICE officers, and then Trump responded with the 2,000 National Guard troops. At J6, by 8 p.m. that night, the Capitol was declared safe. So in a 6-hour time frame, that situation had gotten responded to by the National Guard. 2 governors of 2 separate states had authorized use of the National Guard. And
why didn't the president
authorize them? And so
why didn't the president, though?
Well, the president did on, I believe, January 3rd. He authorized the use of it.
Oh, that's not true. And
not
listen,
true,
I used to
not
debate
true,
on this, and Christopher Miller was the person. I mean, we could go through the chain of events. That's not true. It's not true. As a matter of fact, no one could be found when this was going on. And, and ultimately, no matter what happened, Trump is the, he's in charge of the DC National Guard. He sat there in his little TV room off the Oval Office eating a cheeseburger. Even after they slipped him those breast pocket cards, that fit in a suit pocket that said, person, which was Ashley Babbitt, pew-pewed in Capitol, wounded in chest. He sat there for hours after and did nothing. So it's either he's impotent or he organized an insurrection, or it's a combination of both.
So we're thinking the subcommittee on oversight, the House subcommittee on oversight, lied in their memorandum of the events of J6, the transcript, where it says on January 3rd.
I don't want to go. We'll get to J6. Okay, we'll get to J6. We will get to Andrew. Andrew,
that's another. And listen, we've already,
guys, please stop. Everybody, we're all talking same time. Stop. I promise you that we will get to January 6th. I promise. Okay.
Well,
we were talking. Andrew, please stop. Andrew,
I thought we were going to show our evidence. I thought we are.
But we were talking about LA, and now the conversation has veered towards J6. We're going to stay on LA. I was asking you to respond to what I wrote, and then you went towards LA. Okay? Again, specifically, first of all, the timeline is skewed. Gavin Newsom has come out and said, no, Donald Trump is a bold-faced liar, that we never had that conversation about the National Guard being deployed. So who do you believe? Do you believe Donald Trump, or do you believe Gavin Newsom?
I think both of them have lied for political gain.
Okay, again, this is where we can't have an objective conversation. Gavin Newsom is saying that Donald Trump's made a statement that we had a conversation about deploying the National Guard. Gavin Newsom is saying that never happened. So who do we believe? Do we believe Newsom or do we believe Trump?
So I just want to make sure you're saying that Gavin Newsom is the arbiter of reality and truth?
No, I'm asking you, someone lied. Gavin Newsom is saying that Donald Trump is a bold-faced liar because Trump went public and said that I had a conversation with Gavin Newsom about deploying the National Guard. And Gavin Newsom saying that did not happen. So who do we believe?
I would suggest that it doesn't matter who is telling the truth. What matters is nearly 24 hours went on where these protests were going on and escalating to the point where we have DHS officers coming out and saying that they were assaulted, tires were slashed and vandalized, and they were impeded. We know they were impeded from doing their job. And then the president, nearly 24 hours later, had to send in the National Guard. I think the question
that I asked, Andrew,
is disgraceful.
Andrew, the question that I asked you is that Donald Trump made a statement publicly that said he had conversations with Gavin Newsom about deploying the National Guard. Okay? And Gavin Newsom said, no, that did not happen. Okay?
I would say release the transcript.
Okay, fine. So would you agree that somebody's lying?
I think we can all agree on that. There's probably a transcript of it. Usually when the president's talking on the phone, it's a recorded conversation.
Look, I can answer this. I want to be able to speak at some point. So I'm just going to say this. He invoked the National Guard. He called up the National Guard under 10 USC 12406, which underneath the three reasons in which you can invoke 10 USC 12406, it literally states, and I quote, orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. So, bottom line, Gavin Newsom says that conversation never happened. He has stated over and over and over in the last 24 hours, I don't want them here. We have this under control. Andrew, my guess is you do not live in California or never have, because you don't understand that the LA Police Department, they are the military. They are equipped like a U.S. military. They have tanks. They have, anything you can imagine that would make the U.S. military, LAPD also has at their disposal. And yeah, you said they declared, whatever they declared. That's the LAPD's warning that, yeah, we're going to start deploying military tactics against you. They have to declare that things are out of control, because that's the LAPD's fair warning before they become a military with tanks and shoot journalists with rubber bullets, which we know has now happened. They have to declare that. They have to say, this is out of control. This is your last warning, because now some shit's about to go down. The LAPD, and again, I've already given you numbers. This is not a riot. This was not out of control. Either you can't grasp the concept. There were more arrests on January 6th times 100 than there were this last weekend. It's just not, the math does not math. LAPD could have handled this on their own, and that has been Gavin Newsom's position the entire time. We do not need Donald Trump. We did not ask for him, and according to 10 USC 12406, orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states. Period.
So again, the question then becomes, Andrew, if you're going to choose to believe the words of Department of Homeland Security, then that's your choice. But I think we can all agree that it's not objective. Like a committee report from a congressional committee chaired by a Democrat or Republican, we have to take it with bias involved, right? Isn't that being objective?
To respond to Felice's point, I think that under 10 U.S. Code 12406, this again is where we start to blur the lines of what is considered what. By definition, you could call what's going on an insurrection.
No, you can't.
Also, I just want to be clear, 10 USC 12406 doesn't use the words insurrection. And I want to say this because, me in research, I'm big on it. Donald Trump himself, before he fell face first into those plane steps going up Air Force, I don't know. If no one's seen Trump drag his leg behind him and then face plant on stairs, it's worth watching. But before, when he was on the ground, before he fell face first, he was asked, is this an insurrection? And he said, no. I can find the clip right now. I have it in today's outline for the People's Receipts. Trump himself said, they asked him, do you think this rises to the level of an insurrection? And he said, no.
I know he said that, but by definition,
I think we should take his word then. And again, the code he used, 10 USC 12406, has no mention of insurrection. It's not about the Insurrection Act or anything of that nature.
Perfect. It does mention rebellion, which rebellion is less
and is not an insurrection. And when Donald Trump was asked before he fell face first, trying to hobble up steps, he said, no, this isn't an insurrection.
And I agree with you on that. But by definition of a violent uprising against government or authority, which is what an insurrection is, then you could make
like January 6th
that this is. If you're going to call J6 an insurrection, then you have to call this an insurrection. However,
I'm not calling what happened in LA. I'm not calling what happened in LA an insurrection. I'm calling January 6th one.
Well, then you're just biased. So 10 U.S.
How am I biased? Look at the data.
No, hold on. It's not. It's about legal codes, right?
Correct.
Trump was charged with inciting an insurrection or actually not at the end of the day. I don't think he actually was federally. But
correct, he wasn't.
But my point is, 10 USC, and again, you're in a semantics debate about what words mean, right? I'm saying Trump himself has said what's happening in LA is not an insurrection. He's invoking a code that doesn't mention insurrection. So I think you're trying to make a false comparison that even Donald Trump himself is not drawing.
Yeah, his own words, Andrew. Would you take his own words for that?
What is the definition of rebellion?
Find the clip. I have it.
Yeah, can you take his own? Can you take his own words? No, Andrew. Can you take his words for it? Like when he didn't call it an insurrection. So why are you?
I said you could argue that it's an insurrection because it's a violent uprising against government or authority, which is the definition of insurrection. More importantly, numerous times Felice has cited 10 U.S. Code 12406. So which
is what they're using.
So
okay, but
Trump incited it. Trump used it to call up the National Guard.
So
and
let's
it has
just play this down.
No, it doesn't talk about insurrection.
So
yeah, let's play his, Andrew, hold on a second. Andrew, we're going to play his sound, okay?
Let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden and his auto pen.
What's the bar for sending Marines?
The bar is what I think it is. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order. When they spit at people, you know, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military, which they do as a common thing. They get up to them this far away, and then they start spitting in their face. That happens, they get hit very hard.
So again, violent people in Los Angeles, and they're not going to get away with it. So what we're trying to find is logical consistency and objectivity, Andrew. And I still feel like you're trying to make this, to Felice's point, this semantic argument. We cannot compare the events of a civil rights protest to the events of J6. We can't compare them. If you're not going to come up and say 10 toes down, there is no doubt in my mind that January 6th was an insurrection. Can you make that statement?
10 U.S. Code 12406.
Andrew, answer the question. Answer the question. Answer the question. We agree. I gave you the rules, and you said you would abide by them. Answer the question. Do you believe 10 toes down that the events of January 6th was an insurrection? Yes or no?
No.
No, you don't.
Can I play the?
So, in your words. So let me just finish this, please. And I was just in the middle of a sentence, and I'll get you after this. A violent act or uprising against a government or authority. You do not believe the events of January 6th were a violent act or uprising against a government or authority. Is what you're saying.
I don't think that was an insurrection. I don't think that the LA stuff going on right now is an insurrection, in my opinion. I understand.
I don't see how you can say that.
Conversation because you know you're wrong on this.
I didn't say I wasn't going to. I just wanted to clarify. I wanted to get to a point where this is what I mean about you cannot be objective. You are refusing to look at the evidence. Is the government, is the U.S. Capitol building the seat of our government? Yes or no?
Yes.
Were the events of that day violent?
Yes.
Was it an uprising against the government?
No.
It wasn't?
No.
If the Capitol building is the seat of our government and there was an official government proceeding happening indoors and the events of that day were violent, by definition, that is an insurrection.
Perfect. Who was charged? Name one person charged with insurrection.
Insurrection is not a criminal code, my guy.
Name one person charged with insurrection that day.
Felice, you can talk to him.
Thank you. So
proving my point. He's proving my point. He can't be objective. He just can't be objective.
10 U.S. Code 12406. Yeah, I'm not objective because I don't agree with you. So
you're not objective. Period. You're just not.
Section 2 of 10 U.S. Code 12406 very clearly states there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States.
But January 6th wasn't, right, in your mind, of course.
So how is, well, first off, facts. 2 governors and the president authorized use of the National Guard prior to.
Incorrect.
20 hours prior to. Gavin Newsom has. So
incorrect.
Really? Virginia, Maryland, and Trump. Go ahead, Google.
Again, who is the governor? Who is the governor? Who is the commander in chief of the DC National Guard?
Donald Trump.
Why were they not called in?
January 3rd, he authorized General Mark Milley to.
The day of, my guy, who is responsible for executing the lawful order to the DC National Guard? Who is it?
Let's see. Oh.
Who is it?
So I believe at 2:42 p.m. was when Trump had authorized the National Guard.
You believe?
Sent them to go down there. Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me. Let me.
You believe?
I can Google it quick for you.
Why were they not there immediately?
I believe Nancy Pelosi is on tape discussing why they weren't there, isn't she?
Oh, don't do that. That's not correct.
Is Nancy Pelosi the commander? Is she in the chain of command to the National Guard? Come on,
and
Andrew.
Can I just say, Christopher Miller was who could have called up the National Guard that day. He was mysteriously MIA for hours, which you could say was orchestrated or not. But I mean, I could produce an article that gives the exact timeline of where Christopher Miller was and why he wasn't calling up the National Guard. But here's what we do know, and is indisputable. Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief of the United States Army. He was sitting in the White House eating a cheeseburger, watching all of this on TV for hours, right? I mean, these are the facts. At any moment, that man, regardless of because I know you mentioned 3 days ago he had handed off power, doesn't matter. If you're not involved in any of this and you don't want it to happen, immediately, snap of a finger, he can call up the DC National Guard and have this end. He let this go on for hours and hours and hours. So I'll say to you again, he's either completely impotent and incompetent, or he was somehow involved in the planning of this, or let's say third option, just wanted it to happen selfishly. Right? So, I mean, or a combination of all three. It doesn't matter if he said, Christopher Miller, I'm going to be busy. He was sitting watching it on TV. We know that. We have the entire timeline. Several of his aides tried to get him to stop it, especially after what Ashley Babbitt had been pew-pewed in the chest. They said, hey, person is down, and he sat there. And I think this is crazy, but I think I actually have my favorite reading of the J6. I delete all videos except for one because it was like so... it haunted me when I heard someone read before I had read the timeline of J6. A lawyer was reading it online and I saved it. Let me find it because I think it's the most damning thing you'll ever hear about J6 and what Trump was doing during it, if I still have it.
While you're looking that up. So again, this is why I asked early on if we could have an objective conversation, and you're just not being objective because it doesn't support your argument, Andrew. It just doesn't. You're trying to spin this.
7 hours.
I'll tell you how.
7 hours.
What?
It lasted 7 hours.
Yeah, I know. And why wasn't the president of the United States, specifically the one who has command and control over the DC National Guard, why were they not called in immediately? Why were they not? It's a simple question. And again, the theory I gave earlier, and this is the theory I had with our previous guest, my belief is because the people that were there in D.C., the insurrectionist traitors, were there to support Trump. The people in L.A. who are protesting illegal deportation and immigration violations to the Constitution are opposing the Trump administration. So of course he's going to want to root out them. His own words. We're gonna have troops everywhere. So again, you cannot be objective. You literally cannot be objective to say that those things in and of themselves are the same. It's crazy.
So by your logic, why did it take 20 hours for him to authorize the National Guard in L.A. and it only took 2 hours at the Capitol?
It didn't take 2 hours. It took, again, the question is, you don't understand the federalization. First of all, the governor, who are the commanders in chief of the National Guards in our country? Who are they?
Virginia governor.
No. Again,
Maryland governor.
This is a big question. Wait. Stop. Who are the commanders in chief of the National Guards in our country?
Of each state? The governors.
Yep. Okay, exactly. The governors. Is DC a state?
No.
Who is then responsible for the command? Who is responsible? Who's the commander in chief of the DC National Guard?
Donald Trump.
Virginia, Maryland are irrelevant.
Not when they authorize the use in case additional forces are needed.
Again, who is the commander in chief of the DC National Guard?
Donald Trump.
Why were they not? Well, the president. Not it's Trump again now, but it's always the president. So why were they not there?
Well, first off, the National Guard was in D.C. all of January 6th. There were some there to do traffic.
I'm done. So, Felice,
yeah, they weren't. Listen, they weren't armed with weapons, and they were doing crowd control. They had orders to not engage with anyone. Andrew, you know, I think you either know better than this, or you're veering off into delusion.
I don't know why you guys can't answer the question.
No,
I'm sorry. I don't know what your question is.
Facts. Yeah, the problem is that Trump didn't authorize the National Guard because it was his supporters. Yet it took 18 additional hours to authorize the National Guard in L.A. than it did in D.C. So
why does that? What relevance does that have at all, Andrew?
For the fact that two governors and the president thought that it was necessary to dispel this uprising that was going on in D.C., yet Gavin Newsom didn't think that it was important to dispel that.
Okay, so I can answer this question. If you're asking in good faith, the U.S. Capitol, where Congress was in session trying to certify the 2020 presidential election, was under attack. People were unalived. Capitol police officers were beaten and were unalived as a result of the attack, while the sitting Congress was about to vote to certify the U.S. presidential election. You cannot be this dense. I don't believe it, Andrew. I think you can reason through this. And we can say, oh, conveniently, Trump said Christopher Miller's in charge, whatever. And then he disappeared for this 3-hour window of time, blah, blah, blah. We can go through that. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump was sitting in the White House impotent. I don't want anyone in control of this country who either is fueling insurrections or rebellions and allowing the U.S. Congress, while they're certifying a presidential election that Donald Trump unequivocally lost, right? And he's putting the lives in danger of our direct elected representatives while they try to certify that election. I know you can reason through that. Or he's completely impotent and sat there and did nothing because he's senile. I think it's a combination of both. And I want to point out, because I want to get into the legal area where you obviously, it's so asinine to debate this. This is what MAGA does. You guys all sit with your cameras off in weird MAGA lives and talk about this like you're doing something. Let me help you with the Supreme Court ruling. You know what the Supreme Court ruling said was an unofficial act that Donald Trump should be prosecuted for? The fake elector scheme. That was the scheme, right? The fake elector scheme. They said that's an unofficial act we can't protect him from, and he can be prosecuted for that. This man had a scheme and set up slates of fake electors, right? And if you're going to do the whole, what about 1960 Hawaii? Yeah, that was a judge. That was a federal judge that certified that there should be a separate set of electors. This was just Trump setting up slates of fake electors. Even the Supreme Court agrees he should be prosecuted for that. You need to stop. And then you're saying, again, you're trying to tie the events of the U.S. Capitol, while the transfer of power, the peaceful transfer of power of the United States, the number one gross domestic product economy in the world, is underway. The alleged seat of democracy in the world. The peaceful transfer of power is being disrupted by violence, and people are hiding and being beaten to death in the Capitol. And you're like somehow trying to say, oh, some people were just on a tourist visit. Come on, Andrew, wake up. And like I said, that's why I gave you arrest numbers in Los Angeles. That was not a riot. There were some protests going on. There will always be bad actors within protests that should be dealt with. If you understand the nature of the LAPD, they are equipped for military action. I'm sure they're pissed they didn't get the chance to do something horrifically violent to people. They enjoy it. They're sickos. Period. End of story. The LAPD can handle military action. That's why they have all the tanks and ridiculous flamethrowers and all the ridiculous things they don't need. Period, Andrew. And anything else is disingenuous.
Can you address what Felice just said, please, Andrew?
I can. I think that this is part of the issue with both sides having conversations right now.
Breaking news. California will sue Trump over National Guard employment. Sorry. It just came. It just popped up. Sorry.
I'm glad. And then a court can decide. You know, just like Newsom coming out in support of states' rights in no income tax.
Like we all want is due process.
Like due process? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a big fan of that. So I get it. We use catchphrases like fake slate of electors rather than.
That's what it was.
Can I help you with that? Because I want to clarify. This is one of my pet peeves about MAGA. I've read all these court documents. You know where the term fake electors came from? From Trump's lawyers in Arizona. You can, and if you prove me wrong, I know I can direct you to the court documents. Trump's lawyers in Arizona, when this was being planned and they were idiotically emailing each other back and forth, they called it fake elector scheme. That's where we got it. So take that up with your Lord and Savior, Donald Trump.
Yeah. So please address what Felice was. I mean, the savage breakdown that she just gave. I again, in an attempt to try to have an objective conversation, and this is my. I'm going to make a prediction. After this live, you're going to go out and attempt to make a video and say that you that we're unwilling to have conversations, or that you own the libs or whatever. I hope you don't, because maybe you're better than that. But most MAGAs aren't. But please address what Felice said.
So, again, I think this is the problem with both sides, where we like to use these catchphrase words like fake slate of electors instead of calling them what they really are and educating the people in the chat and the people listening to these, where you guys have a very big platform and you guys.
I do want to educate people. Do you want me to give some education?
Of that, because there's a lot of education that you guys give.
Again, Donald Trump's own lawyers in Arizona deemed this the fake elector scheme. That's who came up. That's who came up with it.
That it's called the alternative slate of electors.
Okay, no, but let me address that, Andrew, because you said you want people to be. No, Andrew, stop talking. You're accusing me of not understanding things. So I want to give people the resources to know where the truth is. Can you just mute Andrew, because he's driving me insane? So, and let me just give a shout out to the Attorney General of Arizona, Chris Mays, amazingly powerful, brilliant woman. I will direct, if you want to understand the difference between Trump's lawyers naming this the fake elector scheme in their own emails and a legal alternate slate of electors, right? A MAGA who has been fed a bunch of disinformation and misinformation doesn't understand history. In 1960, there were a legal alternate set of electors coming out of Hawaii. What happened there was a federal judge ruled that in court that an alternate slate of electors be readied just in case, right?
Because
there was a federal court ruling. And the reason I'm directing you to anyone that wants to understand the difference, Chris Mays, the Attorney General of Arizona, in the Arizona indictment of the fake elector scheme, spent the first 5 pages explaining this to MAGA, who's just like, she's like, hey, I know some of you have been getting some disinformation. Here's the difference between alternate electors that have been legally ruled to be an alternate slate of electors by a federal judge. And Kenneth Cheeseborough, the architect of the fake elector scheme, saying, well, we're not going to get any federal court rulings. So the next best thing is just have some lawsuits filed in court in the swing states, and maybe that will count. Right? That is the difference between a fake elector scheme that the Supreme Court says is an unofficial act that can in fact be prosecuted, and an actual legal alternate slate of electors set by a federal judge in Hawaii in 1960. Don't ever accuse me of not knowing facts, Andrew. You're an embarrassment.
So again, Andrew, I don't think you're equipped for this conversation because you don't want to speak objectively. You are looking to defend all these kinds of things, and you're going to try to pivot away from this conversation as much as you can. What we just gave you, we should charge you tuition for, because this is a conversation that's been rooted in facts. You were going to attempt to go to the Hawaii situation, and Felice is exactly right. And the reason the judge did that is because at the time the certification was due, the results were still undecided. So the judge authorized alternate slates to be prepared to determine who, once the election was determined final, they would have the appropriate. That's the answer. Unlike the fake electors plot, than the racketeering and corruption perpetrated by the president. I don't know why it's so difficult for people with your political ideology and leaning to be objective. Why is it so hard? Maybe you could be the one. Maybe you could be the one that could step back and say, okay, here's the evidence. And in fact, the Supreme Court decision regarding disqualifying Donald Trump, by the way, the United States Supreme Court never refuted the claim that made by Colorado that he was in fact an insurrectionist, that he incited an insurrection. All they said was a state court cannot disqualify someone from a federal election. So these are the facts. This is not opinion. These are the facts. Why then is it so difficult for you to accept it? You can unmute.
Again, I think this is where it gets disgusting, in my opinion, because there are things that both sides can agree on and come together on, but we choose to argue over words, altered definitions, and things like that that don't move this country forward. For instance, on the immigration situation,
no, we're not going to pivot. We're not going to pivot. No, you are pivoting. We're not talking about immigration.
Like what? Did you not just say like what?
Again, we're not talking again, but we're not talking about immigration now. We're talking about this topic that you wanted to bring up. So please address the fact that
let's talk about the things that we're going to argue against with changing words.
No, because you don't want to have a conversation because you know you don't have the truth on your side. Because you don't have the facts and evidence in your side.
The facts aren't on your side in this case, Andrew. I think, listen, they're not. And I want to say this in good faith, Andrew. I think you think, right? And I appreciate that. And I appreciate these conversations because, like I said, I meant that. And I know it sounded like a joke, but like so few MAGA, like look into things and do research and have. So I value this conversation. I just want to say that. And I promise you, Andrew, I read primary resources. Like it is my mission. If I'm wrong, I'm changing position. So I want to know. It's just when it comes to the alternate slate of electors of 1960 Hawaii and the fake elector scheme, the facts are not on your side.
They're not, Andrew. Just admit that you're wrong about some things. That's all we're talking about. I mean, Felice and I have these conversations a lot. If you can have irrefutable evidence that contradicts what we're saying, then provide it. But just because you don't like it, just because you're backed into a corner, just admit that you're wrong. You don't have the evidence. It doesn't support your argument at all. Your feelings don't fly, friend. You don't have the evidence. It's just not on your side.
Can I just say something also, Andrew? People in the comments keep adding me and saying you have gross content of me up. Can you delete it? Please? I don't know. I don't make videos about you. I could humiliate you. I don't. I don't clip my own content, just so you know.
Before you call me out on that,
I don't know. People keep telling me there are gross videos of me on your page. So if you could just delete them, please do.
I'm glad that you guys have it recorded so that you guys can see that the chat is lying. I have nothing gross about you on my page. What gross things would I have about you?
Don't know. I don't
watch any videos that MAGA tags me in that way, because if I did, it might encourage them to continue. So yeah, I've never looked at your page, and I never will.
What a disgusting thing, a disgusting accusation from somebody.
Okay, fine.
200,000.
Sorry, your feelings are hurt. Sorry, your feelings are hurt. So why is it that you cannot be objective?
If you guys can be objective, if you guys can be objective and admit when you're wrong, read U.S. Code. U.S. Code 10, Section 406, Section 2.
Okay, again, Andrew, we addressed that earlier.
I have it up right now. I read it over and over.
We already read it to you multiple times. So we've already read it, Andrew.
Okay, let me help you how this works. Can I explain to you, because I think you're confused. So let me just explain to you how this reads. It's saying these are the 3 circumstances you can invoke this code under, and then underneath that is how you invoke it, right? And that's the point. It's like, if these things are occurring, sure, invoke this, but then it says, here is the way in which you do that. And again, you can just try to read number 2 like that's a point, but underneath it, it still says, orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of District of Columbia. Those are just, hey, if any of these 3 things are occurring, then you go through the governors of the states. States' rights, brother.
That's right.
And they will help you call up their National Guard.
So if you believe in the concept of federalism, then you should accept the fact that it is the governor and or state legislatures, unless all the criteria is met. And we've gone through this exercise twice. So I don't know why it is that you just refuse to be objective. Don't you want to learn something? Don't you want to be able to say, okay, I didn't look at it that way, or I didn't understand it that way? Were you going to attempt to try to go to Hawaii to support your argument? Be honest.
No, I was not going to go to Hawaii.
Okay, so then again, it was the Trump team that used the word fake electors, no one else. And by the way, what they did, they broke federal law. Okay?
You might be the smartest MAGA, though. If this makes you feel any better, you're doing great. You should go meet Mother of Dragons, and you can misinterpret the law together. You may be one of the smartest MAGA debaters that existed.
They broke federal law, Andrew. If you believe in the concept of a rule of law, then those people on the fake electors plot were indicted, charged, confessed to. I mean, they broke federal law. Why is it so difficult to grasp that concept? I don't get it. I just don't understand why it's so hard.
I think it's dangerous to suggest that everybody that accepts a plea deal does it because they're 100% guilty, and it's not because the sentence they're taking is much favorable compared to what they could get.
So you don't think they did anything wrong?
Everybody that accepts a plea deal is 100% guilty.
You don't think they did something wrong?
Guilty. That's what you're saying?
You don't think they did something wrong?
I don't think that alternate slate of electors is wrong because it's in the law. That's every single state.
It is absolutely not, Andrew. How does Andrew? It's not. Okay, here you go. Who certifies an election?
The governors.
Ultimately, the Secretary of State. The governor signs off on it because the Secretary of State is the administrator of the elections, right?
All right.
Okay, so then in the states in question, who won the states that we're talking about?
Joe Biden.
Okay, and then Joe Biden, based on the amount of votes, the election then was certified by whom?
The Secretary of State and then the governor.
Right. So then if the election results were certified by the Secretary of State and by the governor, then why would you need a fake slate of electors?
Again, we're going to use the catchphrase as opposed to the real word, which is alternative.
The fake word that the Trump lawyers used actually
was due to the 1887.
Can I just finish this line with him? I'll get to you 1 second. Okay, so Andrew, specifically though, we're talking about who certified the election. So what was the plan? What was the idea behind the Green Bay sweep?
if you don't have a alternate slate of electors and there is a legitimate challenge brought before Congress during the count, during the 1887 ECA, during the Electoral College count certification.
Again, who won the states?
Standing.
Who won the states?
We already went through that. Joe Biden.
Okay, so Joe Biden won the states. Secretary of State certified them, signed off by the governor. Done. Okay, so again, what is the Green Bay sweep? What was the idea behind the Green Bay sweep?
I don't know. You can educate me.
The Green Bay sweep was Peter Navarro, Ron Vera. It was his plan the entire time, along with Ken Cheeseborough and others, to created this idea that they could challenge the election, which is why the pressure campaign on Mike Pence. I know this shit from memory. The pressure campaign on Mike Pence, for Mike Pence to reject the duly certified election results from the swing states so that it could be pushed back to the legislatures. Mike Pence said, no, I do not have the ability within the Constitution to do that. Don't forget, there was a scheme to get the fake electors in the hands of Ron
consulting
Johnson.
With every constitutional lawyer in D.C., he was told this is illegal and you can go to jail for it.
So in your world, and I was going there next, so in your world, Kamala Harris could have said, you know what, I'm going to certify the election results for me. Would you have been okay if she had done that?
What is the act that they follow?
Can you answer that question? Can you answer that question, please?
No, I would not be okay if she did that.
Okay, so then why would you be okay? Then why would you be okay with the Trump administration committing federal crime after federal crime after federal crime to do exactly what you did not want Kamala Harris to do?
You interrupted my last sentence. So I would not be okay with her doing that unless there were legitimate challenges.
There were no legitimate challenges.
How do you know that?
I can tell you. I can explain to you exactly how. I know how. Again, let me help you. And you can look up the 1960, the only legal alternate set of electors in existence in Hawaii in 1960, right? That was ordered by a federal judge. It was a federal court order to have an alternate slate of electors prepared because of a legal federal court sanctioned recount that was trying to determine who had won Hawaii. That is the only instance in which there is a valid alternate slate of electors. And by the way, just so you know, all of this is in an email. Kenneth Cheeseborough explained all of this. That's why That's why he confessed. That's why he turned state's witness and was a witness in 7 different trials related to the fake electors scheme. He's a state's witness, proving the point that what had been done was illegal, because he confessed to all this. This is all in emails sent to everyone, like, hey, the only way is if we get a federal judge over these swing states to call for an alternate slate of electors. And the more pressure that was on him, hey, we're going for it anyways. What can we do? What's the best thing to do? Then he said, hey, I guess, like, this is illegal, but let's just have lawsuits in the courts. Let's just have lawsuits filed in these swing states, right? And here's the problem. You said there were legitimate challenges. There weren't. Why? Because evidentiary hearings come up, and someone saying in a signed affidavit, I feel like there was election fraud, is not evidence in a lawsuit. These people have to show up to court, but they would not. So most of these lawsuits were thrown out on hearsay. Now, the Carrie Lake one, that went on, which ended up being a complete sham. She's had to pay defamation. She's had to pay defamation's money to Stephen Richter for making up lies about him as the head of Maricopa County elections. I know you feel like it's the same, but the more you dig into the primary source documents, it's absolutely not. You feel like it is. It isn't.
Yeah, let's game it out a little bit.
Due process, then, just so we're clear.
No, there were 60 court cases.
Was due process. There were over 60 lawsuits. There were over 60 lawsuits. There were over 60 lawsuits. The majority had no standing because signed affidavits from random people who won't show up and say, hey, here's my actual, let me give you an example of an election lawsuit that's going forward. Rockland County, New York. Look this up. This is happening in real time. There's an election lawsuit in Rockland County, New York that affects the Senate races in New York and the presidential election of 2024. And this case has legs. The math is mathing. There are not just sworn affidavits from people that are saying, I want to show up in court and testify, right? I didn't vote for who my vote was counted for. That's the difference. You can't just sign a paper and that's evidence. You've got to show your face under perjury of law.
So again, we're going way beyond.
That was an example of why the lawsuits had no legs. They didn't.
Correct.
And not just that, Andrew, understand, there was no outcome determinative fraud. Hold on. Trump was the president of the United States. Trump's DOJ did an investigation. Zero outcome determinative fraud. This is in primary resources, in federal documents and congressional documents. They hired 2 outside consulting firms to find fraud in the 2020 election. They found zero outcome determinative fraud. I live in a Republican-controlled state, Arizona, where Republicans are like, we're trying to find the fraud you're looking for. Rusty Bowers, the head of the Republican-led House of Representatives, is like, bring me the evidence and I'll do what you want. There was zero evidence. Rudy Giuliani said he had, quote unquote, this is in the court documents, primary source documents, left it in his hotel room, end quote. There was no evidence.
None.
Perfect.
Let's game this out. Let's game this out.
Process of the 1887.
It was followed, Andrew.
So let's game this out. Andrew, let's game this out. Andrew, let's game this out. Hold on.
Let's speak in facts, right? When you have,
you're not speaking facts. No, you're speaking your opinions, your feelings. Let's game this out. Okay, let's game this out. So Kamala Harris was not only the vice president, but also the presidential candidate. So in your mind, Kamala Harris could have said, you know what? There are improprieties. There are reasons for me to not support the outcomes of the duly elected president. Therefore, I am not certifying this election. Would you have been okay if she had done that?
No, because she's not following the 1887 ECA.
Yes, she is. She's using the ECA. Okay, why is she not? So you mean that if there were a panel of, in your words, alternative electors established, that Kamala Harris could then have chosen to accept those and therefore certified herself as the winner? Is that what you're saying?
I get it. You're still confused about facts.
I'm not. But can you answer that question, please? Can you answer that question, please? Answer that question, please. Answer that question, please.
There is a challenge.
Answer that question, please. Answer that question, please. Answer that question, please. Answer the question, please. Answer the question. Answer the question. Answer the question.
A challenge signed by the
answer the question.
And a senator.
Answer the question.
The challenge gets heard, and it gets.
Who certifies the election? Who's the one that opens and certifies the election on certification day? Who's the one?
The vice president.
Exactly. So my point is, Kamala Harris, based on your could have worked with a Democratic rep and a Democratic senator, and they could have said, we're challenging the results. And by the way, there are alternate slates of electors prepared in every single state that Donald Trump won. Therefore, I'm gonna certify myself as the winner. Would you have been okay with that?
That's not the process.
It's exactly the process, dude.
No, it's not, dude.
It's exactly the process.
The process is.
Why can you not accept the truth?
Challenge brought.
You know what, dude?
Joe Biden had a great moment.
I'm just fucking done with you. My God. Sorry, guys. I think we use an opportunity to explain how unbelievably pathetic MAGA is. And now you guys watch. Andrew is going to go make a video attempting to say that he owned Felice and myself. This is. Normally, we don't like to carry those conversations very much. You guys know that we don't really debate very much anymore. But can people look into that level of delusion? Facts crashed out? No, facts didn't crash out. Can people look that far into that level of delusion? Presented the exact same scenario the exact same scenario, and I just put Kamala Harris in the position that Mike Pence was in, and I said Kamala Harris then decides that, you know what, I'm not going to certify, based on the Electoral Count Act, I'm not going to certify the election for Donald Trump. In fact, I'm going to certify it for myself. Come on. That is crazy. I know he comes up here so he can get clips. You guys watch. I will play them because he will clip it and he will attempt to make videos and he will say that fax is triggered or blah, blah, blah. You watch. You watch. That's what's going to happen. That's crazy. I
am triggered by idiocy. Yeah.
Me too. Absolutely.
No,
that is crazy.
People who have no idea what they're talking about trigger me. And the hours I've spent reading primary source documents, I know. That's why the Supreme Court said, hey, here's the official acts Trump can't be tried for. And I mean, we literally watched the Roberts Court grant Trump basic immunity from unbelievably unconstitutional things. And the only thing they said, yeah, except for the fake elector scheme. That's... Can't help them there. That's an unofficial act.
It's just, I think it's an exercise that occasionally, because I don't want people to forget this part of history. You know, I don't want people to forget the fact that Donald Trump will never be held accountable for what he did in an attempt to steal the election. He'll never be held accountable for that because of Merrick Garland. I'll throw some shade at Joe Biden for not either stepping in sooner or asserting a more aggressive attorney general. I think there's lots of reasons there. But again, I think we have to talk about this. And sadly, as we discuss so often, as we discussed, Russian propaganda. I mean, Andrew believes that there's Ukrainian propaganda and not Russian propaganda, as we learned last week. And it's just, we have to kind of have these conversations, right? And I know
just gonna say it again, Andrew's the smartest one, so it just goes down from it. You know what I mean? I'm just saying because that's how insane it is. No offense, Patrick. I feel like we kind of have bonded over the years, but Patrick Henry, did he say anything factual, or was he just I feel, I feel like undocumenteds are up to something. It's okay, cool.
Why lie about what I said? Andrew, everything you said was an attempt to justify your feelings. You don't have the facts on your side. You don't. You didn't want to discuss the court cases, most dismissed on standing. You didn't want to discuss the evidence. You didn't want to admit to the confessions made. You didn't want to admit to Rudy Giuliani saying, "Oh yeah, we had nothing. We'll just tell them that we have no evidence of all this criminality and these dead people voting. We'll just tell people as such." You don't want to talk about any of that, any of it. So that's why your argument is so weak. If you generally want to attempt to try to learn something, then listen to learn as opposed to falling into your nice, cozy, comfort feather bed of lies and misinformation. Why?
I wish people would take everything I said as gospel. Can you imagine? And I'm right. If people would just listen, I actually read primary source documents. I know. And this is the other, because I read every document in the Kerry Lake voter fraud trial in Arizona. And I would say, it had no legs and no proof, and they were literally, and the judge was so nice. This is the point, right?
I'll be right back.
Can people miscount votes in an election or whatever? I think when they did a recount, it was off by a few or whatever, right? It was a really close race. It's not to say that there can't be miscounted votes and you can be off by a few or whatever. That's not what the point is. You have to show intent, right? That's why it's called fraud, right? It's not just, hey, all these different people are counting votes in different places and a few got lost or double counted or, whatever, or some of the machines broke. That's not what it is. You have to then show this was an orchestrated scheme to commit fraud and change the results of the election. And this is what a judge, and I say lovingly because I was where's this man getting this patience from? It was he was teaching Kerry Lake how the law worked and basically begging okay, thank you. We got it. Okay, some votes were miscounted. Now is where you show intent. Do you have any proof that someone intended to change the results of the election? And of course not. That's why we say there's no outcome determinative fraud, and more specifically, no outcome determinative fraud that would change the results of the 2020 election. Period.
It's exactly right. You don't want to talk about the fact that Mr. Trump is caught on a phone call with Brad Rassenberger saying, just find me 11,780 votes. You don't want to have that conversation because it doesn't fit your narrative. If you're gonna make that claim on the phone, then why don't you ask for 15,000, not just one more than you needed? I mean, it's nonsense, and you need some help, Andrew. You need some help. You live in this land of delusion because you've been told to think these things. You are unwilling to accept the truth. You will pivot. You will pivot. You will pivot. You'll pivot. You'll pivot. You come up with lies. You will not address reality. So that's why we do this. I don't like to have those conversations all the time, but I think in this case it's necessary because we cannot let history sweep this under the rug. We can't. And for people to want to make a comparison, that's why I asked the question earlier, and I kind of caught him in a trap saying, so you believe that people who are, enter places illegally and all that kind of shit, and he basically said, yeah, so then therefore you believe that January 6th was an insurrection? Well, no.
Oh, okay. If they're brown, he meant if they're brown.
Yeah.
If they're brown, it depends on the melanin in their skin. If they're patriots, then no, because this is the Boston Tea Party. There's rules for MAGA. Or I say this, this is all just a replay of 1930s and 40s Germany, right? Violence in the name of Mustache Man. Yay, right? What was that place when he tried to do the coup that one time, the beer hall push or whatever, like that he went to jail for? Mustache
before
Man?
The Reichstag.
Yeah,
the beer hall.
He did a J6.
I forget what it's called.
He did a J6, and so, that's fine as long violence in the name of Mustache Man. Yay. Violence in the name of anything else, and I don't even want to say violence because I want to say this, and we know this through domestic teaism. Statistical analysis and research done on any sort of group, right? There will be bad actors that enter, and with a year that group will be compromised, right? What is that? The voting thing what was the group with Laura Loomer and Ali Alexander where they were collecting millions of dollars saying that the election was stolen and no one knows where the money. Stop the Steal. Yeah.
Stop the Steal. Sorry, exactly.
Yeah, it's something that can start as a good idea ends up as just where the F did $50 million go?
Yeah. And again, this is part of the states' rights. We didn't even get into this specifically, but I think it's just another example. And this is what fascism has done. This is what people who, when you have a concerted effort to delegitimize the courts, to delegitimize the press, to delegitimize the rule of law. This is what happens. This is exactly what happens. And then we have just blatant examples of corruption that are just run unfettered because the conditioning from autocrats and cultists have been to say, all these people, the Biden crime family, and then we got that sound from I'll play it because this is fucking scary shit. This is exactly what we're talking about. Mike Johnson basically saying, well, I just want you to know it's justified because I'll just play the sound. This is so scary. This is the whole ball game right here. Listen to this. This is nuts.
Very critical of President Biden and his family's foreign business dealings. You supported an impeachment inquiry as a result of it. Are you equally concerned about President Trump's family's business dealings, especially given the fact that he is in a region now where his family has billions of dollars of investments in Doha and Saudi Arabia, and the fact that he has a crypto business now where he's auctioned off access to the White House for the highest bidder in his meme coin?
Look, there are authorities that police executive branch ethics rules. I'm not an expert in that. My expertise is here in the House. Okay, I will say that
it's the legislative branch.
Many people refer to the Bidens as the Biden crime family is because they were doing all this stuff behind curtains. Whatever that President Trump is doing is out in the open. They're not.
So the Speaker of the House of the U.S. House of Representatives was a constitutional lawyer. His argument to attempt to justify blatant corruption and criminality by the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing, fraudster convicted felon is to say, well, the Biden crime family did it under the dark of night, and Trump's corruption is just for all the world to see. Come on.
And can I just, again, read every single document of the impeachment trials. And I'm not talking about, I did watch them. I read the transcripts. I read the entire behind closed doors Hunter Biden interview. And I've given there's 2 PDFs debunking the entire thing. Just understand that Trump was very mad about being impeached twice, right? I mean, which, he wasn't exactly removed, but he was impeached. There was an impeachment vote twice, and he was upset about that. And he wanted, if there was any evidence to call for that impeachment vote against Joe Biden, if anyone was on board, if you watch the sham impeachment hearings, by the way, that cost us millions of taxpayer dollars, which was just a complete sham. Republicans of the Oversight and Accountability and Judiciary Committees would not show up because they were so ashamed. People resigned from Congress saying, this is not why I'm here. This is actually embarrassing. I don't want to be on camera while you conduct this sham. If there was anything there, and believe me, you can read the documents, and like I said, I have a PDF with links that debunks the entire thing. Thank you, Jamie Raskin, the real constitutional lawyer who doesn't lie for Donald Trump. If there was anything that could link at all to Joe Biden, to anything his son was up to, believe me, there would have been an impeachment vote. There just wasn't. And that's the truth. And Donald Trump is a real grifter. I can show you in his first term how he was being paid by, I'm not talking about a bank in China, I'm talking about a Chinese state-owned bank who was renting empty floors in Trump Towers, paying him. And now it's a million times worse. He's just like, I'm doing it out on the open. And like MAGA's argument is everyone does it. No, they effing don't. No, they effing don't.
Here's another example. This is reported from ProPublica. More than a dozen U.S. officials sold stocks before Trump's tariffs sent the market plunging. More than a dozen high-ranking executive branch officials and congressional aides have made well-timed trades since President Trump took office. Most of them selling stock before the market plunged amid fears that Trump's tariffs would set off a global trade war. All of the trades came shortly before a significant government announcement or development that could influence stock prices. Using non-public information learned at work to trade securities could violate the law. Even if the trades weren't influenced by insider knowledge, trading stock while the federal government's actions move markets can undermine faith in government, and the markets ethics experts say. Quote, it then becomes a thing where our markets look rigged, one expert said. One set of well-timed transactions was made by Marshall Stallings, the director of intergovernmental affairs and public engagement for Trump's trade representatives. On March 25th and 27th, Stallings sold between $2,000 and $30,000 of stock in retail giant Target and mining company Freeport-McMoran. The sales appear to have been made the sales appear to have been an abrupt U-turn as he had purchased the shares less than a week earlier. Days after Stallings' sale, Trump unveiled his most dramatic tariffs. Target stock fell 17%, Freeport-McMoran fell 25%. In response to questions from ProPublica, the officials who made the trades either said they had no insider information that would help them time their decisions, or they did not respond to questions at all. Stallings and the trade representative's office did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Pam Bondi has yet to answer questions about the trades, and the Justice Department did not respond to questions or comments. And we've got dozens of examples of things like that. But Mike Johnson will tell you that the corruption and criminality and fraud and ethics violations, because they're transparent in the Trump administration, that's fine. I think insider trading should absolutely be outlawed. I would go so far as to say that if you were a lobbyist, you can't serve in government. And I don't believe you should be able to be a lobbyist after serving in government. So it is what it is.
Attorney General shouldn't be a lobbyist. Pam Bondi's a lobbyist for Middle Eastern countries. Wasn't
it like $115,000 a month she was getting from the government of Qatar?
Same thing.
Something
the
like
chief
that.
of staff, Susie Wiles, the ice skating, another lobbyist. Like Trump's like, we're draining the swamp. Well, I'm growing it exponentially. Like also the insider trading in Congress, like everyone look up L3 Harris. This is my latest obsession. Mark Wayne Mullen, the senator from States' Rights, Oklahoma.
States' Rights, brother.
These Republicans are all insider traders. L3 Harris is the corporation that's going to do like the supersonic missile tracking for the quote unquote Golden Dome that's estimated to cost us $500 billion, and we don't need. We already have a missile defense system. And He's up 20% on his trade. Congress is outperforming, right? He took a huge position in L3 Harris prior to the announcement of the Golden Dome in the White House, and is up, well, technically 19% last time I checked. Look how many U.S. senators took huge positions in Core Civic and Geo Group, right? They were acting like, we're rounding up immigrants. No, they're making themselves rich off private prison stock in America. It's a GD crime. If you want to be in Congress, stop crying for your cost of living adjustment while enriching yourself with insider trading. Sign something that says you won't take stock positions. And I don't mean you, I get it. You're not placing the trades. You won't have someone place them for you. No one you won't place them in your family's name. You will nowhere benefit from the insider information you're getting from Congress. And then maybe American taxpayers will be more interested in giving you a cost of living adjustment.
I was reading about if the federal minimum wage had tracked with rates of inflation and GDP, it would be closer to $24 an hour right now. So it's kind of interesting to think about. We're talking about, an opportunity to invest in the people who need it the most. I've got some more sound I want to play for you guys, since we're still talking about states' rights and how Gavin Newsom has come out recently and said that, we should just withhold. If the president wants to threaten to withhold federal funding, then California should consider not sending federal income tax. And then, you know what? Go for it. Go for it. Maybe that's the kind of shit that we need to have happen. I want to play this sound because it speaks to the things that Felice talks about a lot, that I talk about a lot in regards to, the Trump tax cuts and what they've done and how the Trump tax cuts have put us in the position that we're in. But it's more than just the Trump tax cuts. Actually, I've got the data instead. So there's a claim that's been made that 57% of the U.S. debt since 2001 is directly attributed to the Bush-era tax cuts and the Trump 2017 TCJA. So 57%. Two significant tax cut packages that cost the federal government roughly $10 trillion by reducing revenues instead of increasing spending. Over time, this revenue shortfall has driven more than half of the rise in the debt to GDP ratio, a key indicator of fiscal health. If you strip out the immediate but temporary effects of emergency spending, like the Great Recession stimulus of 2008, 2009, and COVID relief, that share jumps to over 90% of the debt's ratio. So if you add those two emergency times that we had to spend, in hindsight, I wish we hadn't bailed out the banks, but I get it. Otherwise, 57%, so nearly 60% of our current debt is directly attributed to the Bush-era tax cuts and the Trump tax cuts. Tax cuts significantly alter the trajectory of federal finances. Without them, the debt to GDP ratio would likely be stable and or declining.
I feel like I'm about to have like an orgasm. Like that's, yeah. Like, no, like this is, now you're speaking my language. Like this is what I keep talking about. And like, if you try to debate MAGA, this is true. MAGA's brains don't work. So, like, if you try to have a debate with MAGA about numbers, they'll just look up, like the years a Republican is president. You know what I mean? And then they'll try to be like, well, look, like something increased during this time. I'm like, oh my God, they have no idea. Like you have to actually tie back to someone's presidency. What revenue or what debt did they saddle us with? What was necessary? I love listening to MAGA try to pretend a worldwide pandemic didn't happen. But facts are Joe Biden recovered the best in the G7 while narrowing the deficit.
Correct.
Narrowing the deficit. Trump blew out the deficit, the most in modern history. Oh, except for once this big, beautiful bill passes. It will be the single largest blowout to the deficit and to the debt in U.S. history. And we know, we have 45 years of trailing data now. If you still believe that giving billionaires and corporations tax cuts means that the middle class is going to grow, you are ignorant by choice at this point. We know it nothing trickles down. As a matter of fact, everything just keeps trickling straight on up in defiance of gravity.
The ongoing burden isn't just the initial lost revenue, it's the perpetual interest and on the debt never taken on. In summary, 57% of U.S. debt increases refers to the rise in the debt to GDP ratio since 2001. Tax cuts under Bush and Trump account for $10 trillion in lost revenue, driving that majority share, and excluding one-time crisis relief like COVID and the recession, these tax cuts explain over 90% of the debt income ratio increase. Maths, right? I mean, again, these are the things that we've been saying. People want to point to economic policy, and as we discussed last week, we talk about how one of the biggest lies told the American public is that conservatives are about fiscal responsibility. It's just we are in the financial situation that we are in now, primarily, lots of reasons, capitalism, oligarchs, whatever it might be, the rich eat the rich, but it's tax policy. We see it. Nearly 60% of our debt attributed directly to taxation or lack thereof on the right, tax cuts to the rich.
Even Steve Bannon said it last week. We cannot, the tax cuts should be for the middle and lower classes in perpetuity. They cannot be mathematically, he said. He's like, if you can do math, we cannot give tax cuts to the rich and corporations in perpetuity. Those tax cuts should go to the middle and lower classes, but they cannot go to corporations and billionaires. It's mathematically impossible.
Possible. Exactly. It's mathematically impossible. It's funny because when we were texting yesterday back and forth with Greg, and Greg made an interesting comment when we were talking about how states' rights for thee, not for me. And he mentioned, because those of you who don't know, there's a convoy of tanks and rockets and everything else that are being shipped to D.C. And Greg's like, do you think this is part of the plan to declare martial law? And I mean, I don't think martial, again, M-A-R-T-I-A-L, law. Not Marshall Dillon, not Marshall's, which is a chain store in the Northeast. I don't know if they have it anywhere else, but it's like a TJ Maxx. It's like an elevated TJ Maxx. So I thought I would just kind of go over the definition of what martial law is, so people can have that as moving forward, so people really know, because it's a term that gets thrown out there a lot. But martial law is not just a military presence. It's the collapse of civil control under the weight of authoritarian fear. And it always begins by claiming to, quote, restore order. In the U.S., martial law is not clearly defined in the Constitution, but the ambiguity is exactly what makes it so dangerous. It typically means the military replaces civilian government authority. Normal legal processes are suspended or ignored. Citizens may be subject to curfews, checkpoints, warrantless searches, detainment without charge, etc. And local law enforcement is absorbed or even overridden by federal command. It can formally be declared, or it can happen in effect without an announcement. When governors are bypassed, federal troops flood cities, and constitutional rights are quietly pushed aside. Right now in California, we are seeing federal troops deployed under Title X, not state control. ICE raids escalated in scale and in violence. Protesters met with riot gear and military tactics. A show of federal force that local officials did not authorize and do not control. This is a soft launch of martial law. And if it succeeds, if people stay quiet, divided, or afraid, it will spread. Martial law is not the last step. It's the first stage of full-blown authoritarian rule. Historical parallels that should alarm you. Fascism rarely arrives fully formed. It tiptoes in under the guise of necessity. It masks itself in order, security, patriotism, etc. And then once it's normalized, it tightens the grip. Here's what we've seen before and how it echoes today. In Chile, 1973, Pinochet's coup. Under the pretext of restoring order during unrest, General Pinochet seized power in Chile with U.S. backing. What followed? Civil liberties were suspended.
You're going to attribute this all to the United States. And then you wonder why people are at the southern border.
Exactly. What followed after the U.S. was part of this? Civil liberties suspended, military tribunals replaced civilian courts, thousands imprisoned, tortured, disappeared, dissent criminalized as terrorism. Now, ICE raids echo internal cleansing. Military presence on U.S. streets is no longer unthinkable. It's active policy and happening. Yahtzee, Germany, 1933, the Reichstag fire decree. After the Reichstag, Parliament, the building burned, Schmittler convinced the public to accept suspension of freedom of speech, press, and assembly, mass arrests of political opponents, unlimited detention without trial, emergency powers justified by fear. Now, Trump manufactures fear about immigrants, protesters, journalists, and uses it to justify the unprecedented use of force. United States, 1942, Japanese internment. U.S. government forcibly relocated and interned 120,000 Japanese Americans, most of them citizens, under the guise of national security. No trials, no charges, just suspicion. Rights suspended, communities erased. The majority of white Americans approved. I'll say that again. The majority of white Americans approved. Now, ICE raids, border camps, and DHS operations mirror these mechanisms, and many Americans once again look away. United States, 1970, Kent State. National Guard troops fired on unarmed student protesters, 4 unalived, 9 wounded, for daring to speak out, 4 dead in Ohio. Now we see riot police with military gear at peaceful protests, gas, batons, flashbangs deployed on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens. Pattern is clear. First, they provoke crisis, then they consolidate control, then they criminalize dissent, and always they test the people. They count on fatigue, on fear, on forgetting. We cannot forget, and we most certainly cannot look away.
I think that's so great that you did that, because like one of my favorite things I wrote probably was not that good because there's much better research papers written on it, but I wrote one in college on the imperial boomerang, which is that, I mean, it's this idea that when you engage in imperialistic, colonialistic tactics in third world countries, like exactly what he was talking about in South America, all of the tactics Trump's now using in the US, we empowered coups in other countries, right? This is our colonialistic military tactics we employed in other countries. And what the imperial boomerang theory, on which there's many research papers and statistical analyses done on it, is the thesis that governments that develop repressive techniques to control colonial territories will eventually deploy those same techniques on their local populations.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and when we're seeing it now, I
think case closed.
Case closed.
The imperial boomerang effect is a term for the way in which empires use their colonies as laboratories for methods of counterinsurgency, social control, and repression, methods which can be brought back to the imperial metropolis and deployed against marginalized, subjugated, and subalternative groups.
I think we talk about this often, and we know the quote from Mark Twain, it's not that history repeats itself, but it certainly rhymes. And we bring up, and it's funny that people, we were admonished earlier for, why do you guys always bring up the past? Why do you guys do that? What about Biden? Well, we do it because history matters. We do it because that's
Biden's laptop. Hillary poured bleach on her server.
What about Biden? Calm family. I think it's necessary and point to historical examples. And if we don't learn from history, how do we then protect ourselves from it repeating itself and or rhyming? That's why we spend time talking about these things. That's why we make comparisons. I don't want to be sitting here in 2025 having to make comparisons to Yahtzee, Germany. But sadly, there's too many similarities, way too many similarities. All right. We got a little while to go.
If anyone wants to look that up, you guys, it's called the imperial boomerang. I'll send this to everyone in my Discord. The imperial boomerang, how colonial methods of repression migrate back to the metropolis. But yeah, it's just called like the imperial boomerang theory. And that's what people base, just like, the British Empire, right? What Star Wars was based off of, the fight against empire, right? Was, hey, they're practicing tactics in third world countries that they're later going to use to oppress their own population. I mean, that. Russia does the same. The breakup of the USSR, the way they interfere in all of their former USSR states, try to occupy them militarily, control the government, spread misinformation and disinformation, and eventually just started doing it in Mother Russia.
We've got like a half an hour to go, guys. Let's see if we can hit we can see if we can hit 500K likes. We've only got a few. Please, if you guys wouldn't mind contributing to the gifting goal, if you haven't yet joined our team, please be sure you gift Felice. If you want to support the channel, we are crowdfunded. What we do here, as you guys know, we both put a lot of time and a lot of work into our show, and we hope it's important to you. It's important to both of us. Actually, she and I were discussing this yesterday about how this has become really important to both of our lives since we don't get out much, as they say. I get out a little bit more than you do, but we'll be talking about that. The pay apps are above Felice's head. If you guys want to support the channel, it's a great way to do it. All right, so we know, shifting gears a little bit to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, there still hasn't really been, in my estimation, a public appearance from Mr. Trump specifically addressing the events of last weekend when Ukraine executed that amazing, assault on Russia, and then Russia responded. So there's been no admonishment of what Russia's been doing, only deference paid to Putin. And I wanted to play a little bit of sound, and then of course I did a little bit more research based on what he said here. So this was a couple weeks ago. And we know that he's still not been able to settle this war that he said he would settle in 24 hours.
I think something's going to happen. It's a very big egos involved, I tell you. Big egos involved. But I think something's going to happen. And if it doesn't, I'd just back away, and they're going to have to keep going. Again, this was a European situation. It should have remained a European situation. It should have remained. But we have... because the past administration felt very strongly that we should be involved, that we got involved much more than Europe did in terms of the money and all of the things that we gave. We gave massive amounts, I think record-setting amounts given to a foreign. There's never been anything like this, both weaponry and money. And Europe gave a lot also, but they didn't give anywhere near what we gave. We gave probably almost 3 times the amount. And it's just a shame. The whole thing is a shame.
Okay, so the claim was that that Europe has given 3 times more to support of Ukraine fighting against the illegal, unauthorized invasion of Russia at the hands of Vladimir Putin. Well, I did a little bit of research. So, total U.S. aid, military, financial, humanitarian, approximately $122 billion between 2022 and the end of 2024. There's money that has been frozen, so there's no new money. Any money otherwise authorized was allowed to continue, but no a freeze on additional money. So, $122 billion from the U.S. Of that, $67 billion was direct military aid, and roughly $55 billion in financial and/or humanitarian assistance. As of February, U.S. aid was halted under the current Trump administration, with no new packages since January 9th of 2025. EU, so the number from the United States, $122 billion. The EU member states and EU institutions have contributed $158 billion in combined military, financial, humanitarian, and refugee support. By early 2025, Europe's total exceeded the U.S. by approximately $25 billion. So I don't know in what world, in what maths world the president lives in, but the EU not only has the United States not given 3 times more than the EU, we've actually contributed less to Ukraine's security. I know maths are hard, but Europe has outpaced the U.S. in total support by roughly 20%. Military aid still leans slightly to the U.S. corridor, but Europe now accounts for a comparable share. European refugee support adds significant value, covering humanitarian and economic needs not addressed by the U.S. And when measured as a share of GDP, smaller European nations, Estonia, Denmark, Latvia, Lithuania, have contributed substantially, some over 2%. U.S. pause under Trump has created an opening for EU to increase leadership via a new arms package. European confidence is growing. Germany's major general said Europe could even sustain Ukraine's defense without U.S. support. However, Europe still struggles with capacity in advanced systems, air defense, long-range missiles, etc. In summary, U.S. remains a major military donor but has paused aid as of January 2025. Europe has overtaken the U.S. in total support. military, financial, humanitarian, refugee combined, and a new blend of EU initiatives is underway to compensate and develop independent capacity. So Europe understands the severity of the situation. Again, it shows the weakness and the cowardice, as we attempted to have a conversation with Andrew last week. Why hasn't President Trump been aggressive with Vladimir Putin to say, you want the war to end quickly? Like I told my voters, then just leave. Pack up your shit and go home.
I couldn't agree more. And think about it, like all of the energy, and again, Andrew's one of the smart MAGAs. I'll say that. He says he's not MAGA, but I mean, if you're going to spread those types of weird alternative facts, then you must be.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Think of the energy it takes to defend J6, which is indefensible up until the Supreme Court, when they're like, the only unofficial act, fake elector scheme. Sorry, we can't defend that. And literally, you'll still defend him. And here's the problem. This is the person who's robbing you. I'll never understand it. Immigrants don't have your money. As a matter of fact, they contribute to the U.S. economy and the growth of the U.S. economy and to our retirement. So it makes no sense. You have unless you're just looking at skin color and being weirdly paranoid, none of it, you should support immigrants. They supplement the U.S. economy and contribute to retirement. And I could get into mathematical arguments of that. Like I know MAGA has these really weird ideas about how immigrants cost them money. It's not true. I mean, I could give a mathematical argument of how that happens. But let's just say the simplest way to say is that for 45 years, all we've seen of transfers of wealth to the top of the economy. We know we're being robbed by what group of people? The capitalists, the billionaires, the donor class, the aristocrats. That's what Marx was shouting the same thing after the French Revolution. Hey, I was really into that French Revolution. We were saying no more kings, no more queens, but now these mother effers are just going by another name. Capitalists, they never went away. They still have all the wealth, and they're right at the top of the economy, robbing us. That's what all Karl Marx was ever saying, is like, hey, should we have equity or should we be slaves? That's the only thing he was ever positing, is like, hey, you guys said you were getting rid of kings and queens, and I'm telling you they're still here, and maybe we should wonder why we don't have any equity in the slave labor we're all engaging in. Is it 1 unit of labor for me the same as 1 unit of labor for a billionaire? That's it. It's that simple.
By the way, friends, I just got a text from my mechanic. My daughter's car is beyond repair. So anybody who lives within 500 miles of Vermont, if you've got a car you want to unload, let me know, will you please? I'd appreciate that.
And the hits just keep. I'm sorry, Fax.
Sorry.
And again, this is our Cash App and Venmo. The best way to support us is through that. Both Fax and I, we did, this is our profession. Fax did work in marketing, but I'm just saying this for Fax because he's never going to say it. So I'm going to say it. I also used to be an advertising professional. I left corporate America because I didn't want to be a professional liar and manipulator. But the truth is the first thing that happens in a recession is that marketing and advertising budgets are cut. So let's just assume from now on that this is his primary source of income, as it is mine. Yeah. So yeah, I love gifts because they're so pretty, but this is probably the easiest way to support us without TikTok. I'm sorry, I love you, TikTok. TikTok Shop is great. I shouldn't say this, but that's the facts. And I think Fax and I go back and forth. We were having this conversation, do we want to debate just for entertainment and do pay to kick and things of that nature? But this is the thing. We always debate with ourselves. How do you survive in capitalism? I don't have he has to put a child through college. He has an 18-year-old daughter whose car just broke down and has to put a child through college. So,
another one.
I know. I don't know how I can understand the pressure you're under. And there's no wrong way to survive in capitalism. So I just want to say that no one should feel guilty for how they survive in capitalism, especially when you have dependents that are children. And Fax is never going to say any of that. So I'm just saying it for him.
Thank you. I appreciate you. We'll figure it out like we always do. I prepped some stuff because I thought we'd have Andrew talking about Russian propaganda. I know you'll like this piece, Felice, because I kind of did a historical sort of research regarding some of Vladimir Putin's propaganda strategies and tactics. So he's built one of the most sophisticated and enduring state propaganda machines in modern world. His regime uses propaganda to control opposition, justify war, demonize opponents, and preserve authoritarian rule both domestically and abroad. State-controlled media. Major TV outlets, example, Channel 1, Russia 1, and RT. RT, by the way, funded a lot of right-wing podcasters and creators in the U.S., Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, and others, are state-run or tightly regulated. The Kremlin dictates narratives, often blending news with patriotic entertainment and disinformation. Journalists who stray from official lines risk arrest, exile, or worse. Narratives repeated constantly. Russia is a besieged fortress, surrounded by enemies, NATO, the U.S., and Ukraine. The West is decadent, immoral, and anti-Russian. Putin is the defender of traditional values, stability, and sovereignty. Ukraine is run by Yahtzees and puppets of the West. Censorship and messaging control. Words like war are banned. It must be called a special military operation. Independent outlets are blocked or forced into exile. For example, Meduza, Novaya Gazeta. School textbooks and curricula were rewritten to reflect Kremlin-friendly history. Foreign propaganda and influencing the West. RT, which is Russia Today, and Sputnik. English language state media channels used to sow division, undermine democracies, and push pro-Russia narratives abroad. RT often platforms fringe voices, conspiracy theorists, and Western dissidents to erode trust in institutions. Their social media operations is crazy. Troll farms, like the IRA, which is the Internet Research Agency, spread disinformation during the 2016, 2020, and 24 elections, Brexit referendum, French and German elections, C-19, Ukraine war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fake accounts target political division, inflame race, vaccine, and immigration debates. And then Russia's claim about the war in Ukraine. But that Ukraine attacked first, that Ukraine is developing nuclear and biological weapons, and that Ukraine is run by Yahtzees. They use fake videos, staged interviews, and AI-generated content to confuse and divide. I thought you would like that piece, but that's like...
I do love it. I'm passionate about Russia's lies.
That's exactly the point, right? When we have these conversations and you can pick it, like you can follow, like I'll pay attention when we have these conversations or when we're listening or if I'm trolling through TikTok late at night when I can't sleep and people are discussing Ukraine, they're literally reciting verbatim. We played the sound from Tim Snyder. Last week we spoke to Andrew, how he's a preeminent expert globally on Russian propaganda and specifically as it relates to Ukraine. So it's so blatantly obvious. It's so blatantly obvious. And what we've seen is the minds of MAGA that are easily manipulated anyway have really fallen for this. Like, and not just MAGA. I mean, we have to be careful. People in general who may not even have a political affiliation are just like, well, yeah, Russia used to be, I don't know why everybody's so mad at Russia. I mean, they're defending their citizens against Yahtzees in Ukraine. You know, they're concerned about NATO expansion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not good. It's not good. Not at all.
You can't be that. I mean, you could also read a book. The option is to read books, right? Like,
that's true.
And understand this same strategy has been deployed in different forms for like 30 years, right? I mean, literally on repeat. When you listen, if you ever listen to Tucker Carlson's full interview with Vladimir Putin, he is repeating. He starts 500 years ago and repeats the same cycle. Misinformation and disinformation over the years. And like I say this, I think it's easier for me because I was raised by a malignant narcissist who has much higher IQ than Trump. And I learned at probably the age of 3 from my earliest memories, which I've been told by psychiatrists means I was traumatized and I shouldn't have these vivid memories. But just to never listen to a word that came out of my mother's mouth, right? Just to watch what she did and then decide what I needed to do to stay alive after that, right? Like, don't listen to the words. Watch the pattern of behavior. That is how you survive a malignant narcissist. Watch their pattern of behavior. There are very clear patterns of behavior with people like Vladimir Putin. Don't listen, watch, right? There's two strategies deployed. It is establish hypothetical control, install puppet governments in countries that formerly belonged to the USSR, right? And as long as he has puppet governments that can funnel him contracts and resources, he'll be relatively docile. And then when those puppet governments are broken up, because that's what Zelensky essentially did, NATO said, okay, you're interested in being in NATO. The problem is Russian corruption inside Ukraine. So you're going to have to root that out. And we're going to have to see an honest effort. And we have security and intelligence agencies that know what that corruption is. So if you root it out and you seem to be a free and fair European state that wants to engage in democracy, then that will change. And what you saw is the absolute reaction from Vladimir Putin, him saying, oh shit, I can't rule through puppet government and misinformation and disinformation. You're taking my people, you're rooting them out from controlling Ukraine. Like, now I'm going to use military force. That's what it was. It was a tantrum, because most times, like, look at the Republic of Georgia. He has a misinformation, a disinformation campaign. These people have been holding vigil, trying to get Russian influence outside of their country. And when he can't do that, he occupies 20% of the country. There's a very clear pattern of behavior going on. Stop listening to the words of Donald Trump and watch the pattern of greed and corruption. Same thing with Vladimir Putin. They're not reinventing the wheel. These people aren't geniuses.
Yeah, I mean,
Putin's much smarter than Trump. Just to be.
Oh my God! And you were just touching about how the Burisma connection and the the sound, that famous sound at that presser when Joe Biden was the vice president, representing the foreign policy of the Obama administration, saying, like, I call the president right now and I'm going to withhold that funds. And the right, through Russian propaganda funneled through their bot farms and through social media, tried to say that's an example of Joe Biden and the Obama administration attempting to protect Hunter. No, it was exactly the opposite, because they were not investigating corruption. And they said, you're not going to get this money unless you prove to us that you do want to be a viable
And democracy. They were laundering money. And European banks were saying, we have the financial documents of what this guy is doing. And then the disinformation was saying, oh, that's protecting Hunter Biden. No, it wasn't. They were laundering money. They were, I mean, yeah, all you got to do is just look at the primary source documents and stop listening to what pathological liars say.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you pointed that out. This is one of those
MAGA leftists. Is this the day where you're going to grow some balls and come up here, or are you just in the comments to make random claims and never back them up? Are you going to get on camera today and say something Sorry, I'm just MAGA leftist has been stalking me around the internet for months now, and this could be it, MAGA leftist. We could meet.
Yeah, I can't invite you, MAGA. I can't invite you, MAGA leftists. Please come on up, because I'm about to get something that's probably going to really get your goat. I asked this question, and Felice and I had this discussion yesterday.
He will not come up here.
Yeah,
just as we were prepping for the show. He won't.
I did a video yesterday because one of the biggest lies told to the American people is that the reason that the Second Amendment was established is to give the citizenry the ability to fight back against a tyrannical government, which is a bold-faced lie. Which, in fact, it's really interesting, because if that were the case, then why would they address treason and insurrection in the Constitution? So if you make claims about a revolt and or an uprising against the government, you are committing a federal crime. So it's kind of funny. So the history of the Second Amendment in particular, and I brought this up because would you want brown-skinned people in LA to be able to bring their firearms to these protests to push back against a tyrannical government? or is it only tyrannical if it's opposition to a red hat? So here's a little bit of a history lesson. Again, the text of from 1791, the text of the 2A, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, should not be infringed. The language was heavily shaped by political tensions between Federalists and anti-Federalists, but also by Southern states' fear of slave uprisings. In Southern states like Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia, white landowners lived in constant fear of slave uprisings due to large population of enslaved people, plus the fact that at post-Revolutionary War, the militia was so scattered because people were settling, right, trying to find a spot to live. So there was no really, the state militias were considerably smaller, and the U.S. Army at that time was just fractured, okay? So Southern slave owners, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia in particular, were really concerned about, because they were now outnumbered by enslaved black people. So high-profile slave rebellions, like those led by Gabriel Prosser, 1800, and Nat Turner, you want to read about two heroes in American history that never get discussed? Read about Gabe Prosser and Nat Turner. They deeply terrified white elites. To suppress rebellion and maintain white supremacy, Southern states relied heavily on slave patrols, militia-like forces composed of armed white citizens who searched for runaway slaves, broke up gatherings of enslaved people, disarmed free black people, and then used violence to enforce control. These patrols were organized and regulated by the state militias. So
states' rights, brother. That's states' rights. As long as we're tracking down black people, states' rights.
States' rights. You can go back to the text, right? The text of the Second Amendment. Very clear. Well-regulated militia. Thank you. All right. So when the Constitution was being debated, anti-Federalists, especially in the South, worried that the new federal government could disarm state militias, which they viewed as essential for maintaining order, a euphemism for controlling enslaved people. George Mason, a Virginian, warned that federal control over militias might leave the South vulnerable to slave revolts. Patrick Henry, not to be confused with the Patrick Henry that we were discussing with earlier, feared the North might dominate Congress and restrict the South's ability to control its enslaved population through militia action. To secure ratification, James Madison included the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights, partly to reassure Southern states that their militias, and thus their slave patrols, might not be disarmed by the federal government. Historian Carl Bogus from Roger Williams University argues that the Second Amendment was intended to preserve the slave patrol militias in the South. He asserts that protecting slavery was a motivating force behind the inclusion of the right to bear arms.
As long as we're oppressing people with melanin, then the Constitution matters, right? States' rights, brother.
States' rights, brother. We'll do the double.
All these black and brown people voting. States' rights, brother. Let's gerrymander this state. Let's suppress voting rights. Let's arm as many white people as possible. But my theory is, and I come from Arizona, born and raised, where, white people with masks on will be carrying AKs. I have a theory. I've been, and little known fact, the Phoenix Police Department is under the jurisdiction of the federal DOJ because they've unalived so many brown black people. And not people who actually had weapons, that they were like, oh, they were just trying to get their license out of their pocket, and then we unalive them. Yeah, it's one rule for thee and not for me.
States' right for thee. States' rights, brother, for thee, but not for me. So, in summary, the concept was slave rebellions, the Second Amendment's role. So the slave rebellions is the concept, prompted Southern fears of federal disarmament. State militias, and then the role of the Second Amendment, functioned as slave patrols in the South. Anti-federalist pressure demanded protection of militias to maintain racial control. And then the constitutional compromise, to include language in the 2A, was so that the Second Amendment helped secure Southern support. While the Second Amendment is now commonly debated in terms of individual rights and firearm ownership, its historical roots include a direct connection to the maintenance of slavery and the suppression of black resistance in early America. Understanding this legacy is crucial for a full, honest conversation about the Second Amendment, its origins, and its purposes. One of those things that, Scalia has talked about it, and Warren Burger, former Chief Justice, talked about some of the biggest lies ever told the American people about the individual rights, because they genuinely continue to believe to this day that it's about tyranny. So if that is the case, Felice, I will ask the question again. If is it only who gets to determine if the government is tyrannical? Because I would say what's happening in LA would be considered a bit tyrannical. So if that's the case, and we follow MAGA's line of logic, then the citizenry should easily be able to be armed to fight back against a tyrannical government, right? You would think.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not a hypocrite and you believe in states' rights, brother, then yeah, that's what 2A was for. Is your well-regulated state militia to fight back against federal tyranny. But you all are giant hypocrites who have now completely pivoted your position. And that's why I keep talking. You're talking about objectivity and like, can you just be objective? And I'm talking about logical consistency, which go hand in hand, because you can't have it both ways. Either it's states' rights for brown and black people and you, or it's states' rights for no one, and you guys are giant hypocrites. And all of your shit about federalism and all of this just was because you were racists who wanted, to maintain power. So which one is it? Are you logically consistent and objective, or was this a race war the entire time, and a class war? Which one is it? It can't be both.
It can't be both. You're absolutely right.
Or people in Los Angeles should be arming themselves and fighting back if you're logically consistent.
Absolutely. And that, again, that's a states' rights argument, right? We can certainly have that conversation. The last little piece I wanted to touch on, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, about federal income tax contribution. To DC, since California contributes billions of dollars to support Mississippi, Alabama, West Virginia. Blue states that are Democratic leaning in regards to federal income tax contributions and spending. Blue states tend to be wealthier with higher incomes and property values. Residents pay more in federal income taxes and often receive less in federal aid relative to what they contribute. Red states tend to have lower median incomes and higher poverty rates. Residents pay less in federal income taxes and often receive more in federal aid per dollar. And I went through the exercise. New Jersey, 82 cents. They receive 82 cents for every dollar paid, compared to Mississippi receives $2.10 for every dollar paid. New Jersey gets 82, Mississippi gets 210 back. Blue states subsidize red states. On average, wealthier blue states send more money to Washington than they get back in services and aid. Red states, ready for this, MAGA? Buckle up, since we know that Medicaid and SNAP benefits are on the chopping block in the big, bold, beautiful bill. Red states depend more on federal aid. Programs like Medicaid, SNAP for food assistance, infrastructure funding, and agricultural subsidies are heavily used. Here's the political irony. Red states advocate for smaller government and low taxes, but rely more on federal spending, while blue states often advocate for more federal investment, yet subsidize federal spending in poor states. They
don't understand facts. Let me help you, MAGA. You're welfare queens. You're all welfare queens. You guys are. Well, the biggest welfare queen is Elon Musk, to the tune of $8 million a day. But you guys in red states, you guys are all giant welfare queens, except for Texas and Florida. Well, Florida's economy is actually super upside down right now. Big time. So yeah, you guys, Florida, you might be welfare queens soon. We don't know. Yeah, if tourism doesn't, just remember, every time you insult Canada, Florida, all those people used to summer in Florida and give you guys tourism income. Yep. And when you are also on welfare, begging blue states to pay their federal taxes to supplement your lifestyles, because you don't make anyone pay income tax and you're a tax haven for grifting billionaires, just remember this moment, because your state economy in Florida is in free fall. I enjoy watching the numbers.
That begs the question, and we'll wrap here, but should each state then just fend for itself? Right? I mean, because that's what they want. That's the ultimate in states' rights.
I need to move. Right? I live in a red welfare state. Arizona, we do. I respectfully would like to keep receiving federal dollars from blue states. I ask humbly. Otherwise, I have to move.
I get it. This has been great today. Again, friends, like we discussed, not necessarily always wanting to engage in debate, but I think it was necessary because there were some things said about, Andrew said about myself and Felice that I kind of wanted to address, and the fact that he was incredibly disingenuous and insincere about his conversation, inability to be logically consistent and or objective. So we carried him for a while. But I appreciate you guys hanging in there with us.
I just want to say, Robin, thank you so much for the $10. You said love your reports and your big brain. I really appreciate the $10 on Cash App. And then I feel like, oh yeah, in April you sent me a super sticker on YouTube, and I appreciate it. Thank you for the cute dog. And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for being so supportive on Monday Board. I know it's early and enjoying the show. We totally enjoy it, and we're gonna figure out more ways to work together, and maybe we'll have more of these conversations. I do think they're, like you said, I think they're important in a way. And I enjoy being here. So, yeah. Well, it's just a matter, what is really, and I debate with myself, is it cognitive dissonance? Because I mean, it's fascinating to watch that, you know what I mean? It's almost a brain block. It's they hit a wall where it's they just can't follow that line of logic anymore. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's fascinating to watch where it's just nope. I refuse to be logical from here. I would have to admit that the cult I'm in is wrong. I've reached my limit.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's cognitive dissonance. It's confirmation bias. It's it's all those things. It's part of the Russian propaganda strategy, the demoralization. It's all part of the same recipe, in my opinion. But as we've discussed many times, can I share a little bit about what we talked about the week while you're away, potentially? Can I just kind of allude to that? So Felice and I discussed yesterday that there may be some times when you'll see us in the evening, and we might set up situations where we debate, the two of us debating people who are in opposition. We might do it on a different account. We're working on putting the pieces together for that. Programming note, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., we will be on Matt's channel, USMC Angry Matt, Angry Vet. Myself, Felice, and Matt will be talking, again, a new edition of What Are You Effing Fighting For? The Effing Fight For, our town hall series. It'll be 2 hours tomorrow night. And we want Matt to host. He was kind enough to offer to host. We'll rotate this around because we want to have this conversation about the U.S. military and now how they're involved in L.A. And I'm sure Matt's got very strong opinions about that. So that will be tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Are you live later today, or are you going to take a nap?
I know. That's what I'm trying to decide. I might not do a live later, only because just like you have a problem with your daughter, I think I need to take my father to a doctor's appointment. So I'll let you guys know in the Discord and just I just need to go, return some phone calls and figure out what's going on. And then I'll know. Otherwise, I plan on doing our same live with Matt in the morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern, and then 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Matt, Steve, and I will be live. And we want to do some town hall stuff. Yeah. So this is tomorrow. So if you have questions or whatever, or you want to discuss how you feel or perceive what's going on in LA, I think, any healthy conversation we can have around it will be good, because it is, I feel... Steve and I were talking, and it was almost like we weren't even acknowledging what was happening in LA. And then I think me not sleeping again last night and kind of really just inundating myself with that information. It is very overwhelming to be in this country and to try to survive. So if you're feeling like you're going insane, I just want to validate you. You are not alone. I feel it too. I feel I have what is that analogy where you have all these spinning plates in the air? That's what I feel like. We're all just trying to survive. We're and it's not enough
spoons. You can join the club if you want. If you two are if you two are an insomniac and you can't sleep at all, then you can join Felice and I, because we're
you might just start debating. That's one of the things we're talking about. We should just start debating in the middle of the night where we're not sleeping. Why are we sitting there not sleeping? So I just wanted to just say if you are overwhelmed and you're I'm just trying to survive normal shitty capitalism, and now on top of all of this, I have no idea how to plan for my future. I am right there with you. I'm I've got to keep my dad and my cat alive, and like, we got to make money. But yeah, like, so I just want to express, like, you're not alone. We're all struggling through this together.
We are, and that's why we're here, and that's why this is important to us. And I'll echo what Felice had said earlier about how, we appreciate the support that you show both of us. I know that you've spent a lot of time building up your channel, done the same here, and we could not do it without you guys. So thank you all very, very much. We don't know about Felice. She'll let you know about later. Thank you, mods. We're going to raid our friend Manda. Please tell her we said hi. You guys all know Manda, Amanda MBW. And if anybody within, like I said, 500 miles, if you got a car you want to unload, please DM me, because it's about to be summer, and we're going to be down a car in our house, which is going to be a drag. Anyway, love you all. Thank you guys very, very much. And we will see you mañana, 8 a.m. Eastern time. Maybe Felice later today. I appreciate you guys. Love you very much.